latest collaborations with the podcast is an awesome small company out of Santa Rosa, California called Roswell Pro Audio. They make these awesome Mini K condenser microphones. The one I'm speaking on right now is the Mini K67X. I really love the sparkle and the vibe that this one has. I've got two others here. I've got the Mini K87, which is flatter, and I've got the 47, which is great. I've used that on a guitar cab a bit. Handmade, North American, North California. And what they've done with this line is incredible because you take up less space. You still get all the high-end quality from a large diaphragm condenser in a smaller footprint. And at a better price. These mics, the Mini Ks, the 400, 500 range, they do have some really incredible large body mics that are capturing some of the most sought after sounds out there. But I will say that the Mini K series kills. You can replace your Shure SM7B easily with one of these first three mics that I was just discussing, the 87, 67X, or the 47, probably the 87 or the 67. If you want a little color, the 67X is it. I like the color in it. The 87 is a little more flat. It's nice. It's got the light blue one here. You're going to start seeing these pop up all over the place because they're really catching on with a lot of artists right at the moment. So I encourage you, check out RoswellProAudio.com. Check out the Mini K series. Compare and contrast. Once you get one of these, you're going to want to get the other ones too and have them around. They make some great overheads. They make a couple of great kick drum mics. And you can also check out micparts.com too. That's a sister company to Roswell where you can do custom mics and custom mic parts there. Check it out. Thank you for your time.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson. Palpable paradox.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. First world problems, bro. Is my audio? I've never done this before, like with this setup. So let me know if I need to change anything.
No, it's sounding good.
Cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I like you got the in-ears too, man. You say it's your first time. You say it's your first time, but you look like a pro.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I've done podcasts before. I haven't done like with the DSLR, and I haven't done a video podcast before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The Jetsons, they foretold this somewhere.
Yeah, I don't even like to take calls with clients or friends with FaceTime or anything because I get distracted when I look at them. Like I'll look around their room and stuff sometimes when they're talking, and I'm like, I should probably be paying attention to this person.
Man, that's actually an interesting point because so many like audio demos these days are done with video attached to them, and it can distract you from what you're listening to.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm hearing with my eyes. Oh, that looks great. Meanwhile, right. you didn't notice that audio was not exactly what you needed or what for the product or whatever. So
yeah, you're too focused on what you're looking at.
Yeah, and hey, it's a sales technique. It's sex, baby. It's like,
I would think.
Yeah. How are you, man?
Good. My year is getting kind of crazy, out of control, busy, and it's kind of happening at this rate that I didn't expect. So now that it's happening, I'm kind of forgetting when things are, and as you know,
it's okay. Don't worry about it.
I can't believe I'm that person who just like slept through something. I'm that guy. Never been.
No worry. I have done it. I don't sleep through things, but like I do just like, if I don't put it in my calendar and I don't have a reminder, and then I just kind of like space, and then like it's 3 days or 4 days, a week later, and I'm like, I feel like there's something I was going to do, but I think I'm just going to go for a walk or do something else. And then like I get all these messages. I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be in a meeting talking about important things, and I didn't do it.
Right. Yeah. And for me, that night I was asking Sydney, I was like, hey, do I have anything going on tomorrow? Should I be like going to bed at like a normal hour? Cause I'll work till 4 or 5 in the morning. If somebody doesn't say like, you got something to do the next day, I'll just keep going until my eyes are like, oh, that's what I did. So that's naturally what happened. I can't believe I did that.
Hey man, I'm glad that you got some work done.
Thank
'Cause
you.
I know I know that you need to do the thing you need to do. And hey, man,
Sometimes.
maybe tell me about like what's going on. What can you talk about in your current workload? What's on your plate?
Yeah. Well, at this very moment, I'm kind of juggling just working on different bands, some video game related stuff, and just personal production stuff, portfolio stuff that needs to get put out. Planning a lot of trips for the year has been kind of like a part-time job in a lot of ways, just because God, there's a lot of it this year. There's just so many conferences. But yeah, so I'm working on intervals right now with Aaron Marshall. He and I and Brucky, who I work with, we've been going back and forth, just sending pre-production back and forth, working on keys. You know, Aaron's very meticulous and works very detailed. We're like in a spreadsheet and we have documents and stuff. It's great. I love it. So we've been working on that, it's a blast. I'm not used to working on that style of music, so it's been a lot of fun because it's different. It's very challenging. And then I just finished up working on monuments for John Brown and George Lever. They have something that they're working on. I think they're playing it on the tour with Leprous right now. So it'll be cool to hear orchestra and synths play live with them. That'll be neat. And then yeah, I got some video game stuff. Like we did a demo for a AAA game back in September for a couple of months, and it's kind of opening a lot of other doors. So we're just kind of fielding that whole thing because it's new to us. It's a big industry and it's very intimidating for us. So
Wow.
yeah, and then writing the new Doth record with aaaand and getting covers done. Yeah. And then working on Spitfire Audio. They want me to go to Brooklyn College and do like a student seminar type of thing where I speak with the students about working and composing and all that stuff. So
Love that. That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. I'm sure I'm missing something, but yeah. And then I'm working on a Zelda Breath of the Wild thing with my girlfriend Sydney and Brucky. So we got a lot of stuff going on, and there's so much music that we have to schedule, and it's like I need one more person, I think. It's another person. Yeah.
So you and Sydney are kind of like the team, or is Brucky a part of it too, or just kind of project basis, or?
Yeah. So Brucky was my assistant from 2021. He was in my mentorship group that I did in the summer of 2021. So there's a group on Facebook called Perspective. It's a composer group with, I mean, like Hans Zimmer is in there. It's not a joke. It's a great group, but there's also just a lot of aspiring composers in there, and it's a really good community. So they did like a mentorship thing, and I posted that I wanted to do a mentorship, and I had very strict stipulations for it because my path to becoming a composer is very particular. It's not the like go to USC and then get like an assistant's job with a top composer. It was like, oh, I'm in a metal band and now I'm doing this. So I kind of have this kind of DIY ethic of how I got here. So the people that were going to be in my group, I wanted to make sure like, hey, are you going to be cool making it to these meetings every single week? Are you going to make an excuse? Oh, my brother's getting married, I forgot, because if you do, then don't sign up to be a part of my group, because you got to show up. You got to treat it like a job. And Brucky was incredible. The music that he was doing in the group, like when I would create challenges, he's just very unique. And he was my assistant for a long time, but then he started working on stuff with me. Actually, that's kind of how it goes in composing. Is a lot of times you start out helping out, doing automation, some additional stuff here and there, but then he just started kind of working side by side with me. So after working on the AAA game demo, it just made sense to level him up. So now we're kind of working side by side on everything, and he's incredibly important to what I do, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do a lot of it, because it's a lot of work. And then Sydney's my girlfriend, so I'm very fortunate that I live in a household with somebody with a master's in composing. So she's on a different level than I am. Like I'm kind of like some music theory with a lot of just knowing a lot of music and what sounds right, and being kind of like a producer composer in a lot of ways. And she's like, name a classical piece, or if like it's happening in a movie or something, she'll know exactly what it is. Like she's an incredible pianist, and like she can arrange music for anything. She's incredible. So she's super helpful. So the Breath of the Wild stuff is like, it's Nintendo. So it's like really extravagant composing, and she's ground up like building this session with me, and it's a lot of work. So yeah. She works for a company called Materia, which is like, I guess to you and I would be like the Roadrunner Records of the video game music world. So
wow.
Yeah, like really cool company that anytime we go to a record store or a bookstore that sells game OSTs, usually there's a Materia record there. They do most of the big stuff and small stuff. They're really like kind of dedicated to it as a whole. So yeah, she's incredible. My team's mostly like, I work with George Lever as well. He produced Sleep Token and Loathe and Monuments and all that stuff. So yeah, George is my mixing go-to and producer, and then Brucky is my right-hand guy for composing. So yeah, that's our little team.
That's awesome, man. I love that you have your hands in a lot of the cool current things too, monuments, intervals, and doth and all that. It's like, and so with intervals, like, you're composing some stuff for that too, or what? Like, how's that working right now?
Yeah, so Aaron shows up with a ton of, the platform is laid. He's got the foundation. He's got everything. His production demos sound like a finished record for some bands. It's crazy,
man.
But he'll give us MIDI, but we'll also kind of take some creative liberties and, just kind of throw it through different synthesizers, run it through a bunch of stuff. A really common thing is that synthesizers tend to end up being this kind of, like, as a guitar player myself, I used to treat it like, find the sound that you like and then change it a little bit and then run the whole song that way through that one patch, right? So for what's cool is like evolving in the synth world and becoming like heavy in sound designing and everything, we have like a different approach to automating synthesizers and changing parameters and using plugins in really uncommon ways. So I think it's been helpful to just have a really good layer of what he likes with synthesizers, like picking a sound. I like this sound. And then he gives me a whole track of that. And I'm like, cool. So in certain spots, we got to change it though. It can't just be the same thing all the way through. You got to run a filter sweep here, et cetera. So it's been fun just kind of taking his ideas and also branching off with it a little bit. But for the most part, it's just making his already existing ideas kind of come to life a little bit more, and then adding on top of it and coming up with cool ideas, some sound design stuff, some drum stuff, little things here and there. But it's been a lot of fun. I mean, his music is incredible. He's an incredible guitar player. He's like a machine. You couldn't ask for a better person to give you DIs for. Like it's perfect. It's like on the grid, perfectly tuned, intonated, everything. It's amazing.
Oh, I loved hearing that. I mean, it's not surprising to me. The bit I've worked with Aaron through the years, he's always been an overachiever in the process, right? Like he's always kind of been, he's like, yeah, I could just do this, but I'm gonna do all of this too. And at each step of the way, I've seen him up level and, and again and again, and to be pulling somebody like yourself in to this project to me sounds like a total next level situation. So I can't wait to see how this turns out.
Yeah, he has a vision for things. Like as soon as he's through a couple of songs, he's already like figuring out how the rest of everything's going to kind of pan out, which is, it's very similar in a lot of ways to how a director works. So he has something. I mean, obviously he's a little different than the average band member. He's a guy who can carry the whole thing and make everything work himself. Like it's a lot to do it at his level. A lot of people would be, oh, we need, a record label. I want all the guys in the band to be contributing financially and doing all this stuff. He just makes it happen. But he's literally like a producer director. It's like Brad Pitt directing his own movie and producing it. It's crazy. Yeah, it's very impressive. I think if I can help kind of facilitate this, I think Aaron has a future with doing stuff for anime or something. His music is so it's like passively enjoyable, but also has a lot of energy to it. So it doesn't quite hit that like hard edge where it makes you like stressed out. It's enjoyable and satisfying. And a lot of anime music is that. It's not, when you hear metal stuff in anime, or if you hear anything with like guitars, it's never like too stressful. It's just the right amount of melody and kind of energy, and Aaron has a really good grip on that. So I hope that some of this music can get, open some doors for him, because it could be really cool. It's just different. It's a different thing thinking about visual components when you do some music stuff. So I would hope that at some point he can do some like video games or something. He's got something there for sure. So
that's an you're circling back almost to like one of the first comments was talking about our visuals in with our audio, right? And something that I regularly kind of circle back around to in my mind, especially as I'm making my own music. I'm like, I'm sure most people like, oh, I can almost envision the video, the visuals that are happening for the thing, especially as the music starts to solidify. You're like, oh, this is like the final thing. And I can really imagine these things. That it's interesting because, and we could probably even take this back to like, your first experience. At least I was around as MTV was, solidifying and coming in. And I remember, and not that I had a big, thought about it when I was a kid, but like, how much a good, video for the song made you like the song, like you could just hear the song and be like, that song's cool. But when you, it's like a difference of like hearing Michael Jackson's Bad and then like seeing Michael Jackson's Bad, or Thriller or whatever. Like, I mean, there's just a bigger concept at play there. And I love that, how that element, it's a kind of a love-hate relationship, because like I'm part of it, you're like, the audio person in me is like, yeah, great. Do we have to do a video to like explain what it is that I put on wax here for you? And then sometimes you're like, I think the communication won't actually be complete unless I give you a visual component. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. And you obviously live in both those worlds. You're
hitting some really important parts of something that, so I mean, some of it is weird these days, because a lot of people are really caught up in the musicianship side of things, right? Like a lot of the performance for the video is like really focused on the showmanship of like, oh, like look at the things that I'm doing. And that's great. That's, people want that, because we're in this kind of society now where like people like to challenge themselves in a lot of ways. So I think it's great that we do that. But I do miss the conceptual music videos, or like really like the old Tool music videos or Nine Inch Nails, where it was like the person who made it was an artist. They weren't just a videographer, like they weren't just like, oh, let's find a warehouse, throw some red lights behind you, and then just rock out. We'll do some slow motion here and there, right? It's like, no, we like, this is what this song is about, and the director gets it or they don't. And you get like Eiffel 65's music video where it's like, I just watched a Vice documentary on that song, which is fascinating, by the way. Really? The way it came together and just everything behind that song is really interesting.
The Blue song or whatever.
Yeah, Blue. The music video was supposed to be kind of like Metal Gear Solid, apparently. If you told me that when it came out, I wouldn't have understood that. But then, so that video totally didn't relate to the song at all to me when I saw it, because I had to have it explained, right? But now you fast forward and I see videos like, let me think of, actually, I have a friend who does music videos, and he's always been really into doing the storytelling thing. So it does exist in metal, but it's kind of like it's lost a lot of its artistic direction side of things. Like people are kind of, it's like, this is a song about a breakup. It's like just a videographer walking around a house following these two people, and the guy kind of like pretends to be angry and the girl pretends to be sad, and then vice versa. It's like kind of artistic, but it's just missing that, like even Mudvayne Dig, like that music video when it came out, there's a lot of art to the simplicity of it. It feels like 2001 A Space Odyssey. I have the DVD over on a shelf, like it has multiple angles you could watch it. They have these weird concepts behind things. If you're going to do it simple and just do a performance, like do something unique, do something cool, give people like control over what they're seeing or something, like make it more interactive. But it's it's definitely different. I'm actually I'm supposed to be working on new brand to sacrifice with Leo. He and I have become friends, and we've talked about like working on some stuff together. And he's very into the cinematic side of things. Like he loves composing, he loves video game music, he loves all the same stuff I do. So he definitely, you know, is somebody where he could take this and he could end up doing composing at some point as well too. He's very talented and very creative. But his band's music videos are like, they're like, it's like watching a movie scene sometimes, which is I love that. That's probably why I gravitated towards them when I heard them. I was like, wow, this is, aside from being super heavy and unique, he has like a vision with his singer Kyle. They have just really good creative heads, and I think that's that should be kind of a foundation. I think bands should really start thinking about Headbangers Ball days where like getting a music video done was a big deal. It wasn't just something you do, you know. Oh, you want to be legit, you got to get a playthrough video of your band in a warehouse. Like, no, do something cool. Like, think about this in 10 years. You know, are you going to be proud of this in 10 years? I don't think people think that far ahead. I think they're kind of, you know, just thinking about what's right and wrong now versus what's going to last later. So yeah. Did you ever do a music video with your band back in Seattle?
I did one, and it was just like a live playthrough thing. And as a matter of fact, I made me think about that immediately. I'm like, yeah, we weren't thinking too far in the future about that thing, but because we were doing our best to try and just have something up. And I think that what you just said is exactly where we were at. We're like, oh, well, we're kind of desperate. We don't have a lot of money, and we're not together. We're not always together on the vision, you know, of things. And so, I mean, if it was left up to any one of us, yeah, we would have come up with some sort of concept and done a thing. But, you know, I think that's maybe what you're even outlining, is that like a lot of situations with a label or not, like I think that the young person, a lot of times in metal, that's kind of part of where we're at, is desperate. They're desperate. They have a sense of desperation because they've spent so much time not doing all the things for the music maybe. And now it's a season of like time to do things. And there's a little bit of finance, you know, available for the situation. And the people that are guiding it aren't the creatives, like you said. They're just production team, you know, and a label or an advisor saying, hey man, you got to get this done, let's just knock it out. Oh, you have a warehouse, like let's got a lot of graffiti, let's go, you know, we'll set up some lights and you've got a cool video, bro. And yeah, comparison to your garage or your bedroom, yeah, it's cool, right? Like, and thankfully, you know, people can see you rocking out, expressing yourself. At the same time, you know, like not every band is lucky enough to have an Adam Jones, you know?
Oh, I know.
Jesus, yeah. You know, like those early Tool videos, not only were they intriguing and original, but they were mysterious. You know, the visuals, you know, almost left you with more questions than answers, you know, even when you tried to combine them with the lyrics and the overall, you're like, and that's like part of the beauty of that band, even still today, even though they're more available and you know more about them and you've seen more interviews with them now than ever, but it's you know, like to have some mystery. And we don't live in a mysterious age really anymore. Like it's everything exposed all the time. Oh yeah, well, how'd you do it? Well, here, okay, hold on a second, let me show you. It goes A to B and C to D. Yep. And you know, nobody holds too much, very few people hold much back.
Yeah.
You know,
dude, this is something I've talked about on just like in personal private conversations many times, where it's like the mysticism of the 90s and early 2000s metal community and music in general is just gone. Like the veil has been lifted. We know everything that somebody's eaten. People are into like showing the coffee that they made that day. And like, then you get like the thing that's really bad about it. Some of it, honestly, not bad, but you know, different, I guess you could say, is when they're doing these pictures, you're also like, you see their apartment and stuff, you know, it's like, dude, I didn't want to know any of this, you know, I don't want to know that you're like living like me or something, you know, when you're like thinking about it from like a consumer perspective, like as a listener, you want to create the backdrop for the person, you know, like what is oh, the guys from Slipknot probably live in like a cave or something. I don't know, you know,
Totally.
or like in the movie Seven or something, like they live in like one of those houses. You know, you don't want to be like, oh, those guys are living in like a cul-de-sac in Tampa, Florida, or something, like a gated
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, and it's like, I think, yeah, exactly. It's a blessing and a curse. It's the, the good news and the bad news at the same time. The good news is that like the incessant curiosity about your favorite musicians can be cured to most degrees. And also, as soon there's this kind of Zen element like that. I love how like Alan Watts would talk about like, you shouldn't try to cure every curiosity. You should remain curious and let certain things remain mysterious so that you can actually enjoy them. Because the moment you kind of label it, the moment you know that Jim Root is a really nice chill guy that like works on his motorcycles and cars and likes to collect guitars, and if you stopped him on the street, he'd just be like, hey, how's it going? Cool.
Right.
The moment that you know that, it's kind of almost, it's over in a weird sense. You're like,
Right.
Yeah. Whereas, and it's not that you want to remain feeling like, oh, he must be a serial killer. It's not like, we're not in that stage either, but somewhere in between might be more of the answer. I don't know. And maybe not as many people out there want what you and I,
Right.
adore.
Different generations, especially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They want to know everything. And I think there's an advantage to that, because do you remember back in the Guitar World days where if you wanted to know what a guitar player was using for their rig, they had this like cartoon at the back, and it was like you see the amps in like cartoon vector form, and it's like they're using a wall of Marshall mode 4s and like line 60 L6 or 4s or whatever. And it's like, it's a cartoon, like it's not real. But that was exciting for me. It was like, oh, this month is whatever guitar player, Fear Factory or something. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like now I get to know what the guy uses. Whereas before it was like, how do you find this out? YouTube in the early 2000s was kind of like E-Bomb's world in a lot of way. It wasn't really like a real source of entertainment and information. It was more of like, oh, here's weird, funny videos. But so you couldn't really like look up like, what is Dino Casares using? Whereas now you can find out everything. There's a rig rundown, and some dude who can recreate it perfectly, and he has all the gear, and he has an LA custom shop from back in that day. But you get a lot of insight, and that's great, because then you can kind of skip the waiting process of arriving at the sound that you want. And I wish I had that earlier on. It was a lot of trial and error, but at the same time, I'm not super excited to learn a lot of the information that I do get anymore. It's kind of like it's built in. It's like when you're in school, if you're reading through your book, that you can go to the back and like look up the thing that you want, and then it tells you what page to go to. You can kind of do that now in a lot of ways, and that's not quite as exciting as it used to be, especially since we're kind of homogenizing a lot as well too, in terms of what tools people use. Everybody's kind of in some ways arriving at the same point, just with different mixing producers. But I still think it's great that people have the tools available, and it's not super expensive. Like there's some advantages. I when you were talking about like Jim Root, you remember a band called Portal? They're from Australia.
I don't know Portal.
Not the easiest listen in the world. I love it. I'm kind of like a closet black metal, weird ambient death metal fan. So once in a while I go down some dark, like Lovecraftian love holes with bands, but love holes.
Hey,
that's what you call a rabbit hole for Lovecraft. It's also
a new band
disgusting.
name too. Welcome everybody. My band's called Love Hole.
That's like a band that would be in The Sopranos, like a fake imaginary band. We are the Love Holes. And
exactly.
Portal is this band that kind of had this same kind of Slipknot effect, but like more recently. And they're this weird band that wears like weird outfits. They started out wearing, he looked like a cuckoo clock. I know it sounds funny, but if you ever look it up, like back when it first saw it, I was like, this is really creepy. And then the dudes in the band, the guitar players and the drummer, wear like a black burlap sack over their head with like a noose around their neck. It's it's super edgy.
Sure.
But then they evolve, and then eventually he would dress up as like the Pope, before Ghost did it, and then he would dress up as this like veiled bride with like tentacle fingers, and underneath the veil is this like pale white face that's like a mask on its own. So it's like a meta mask. Super creepy. It was super creepy until I went to go see Portal open for Gorguts. First time they ever played in America. I went to go see Portal open for Gorguts. And I went with one of my close friends, Brett. He's in revocation now, but he used to tour with my band Binary Code back in the day. He and I go to this, and it was ruined for us because we saw the singer backstage. Totally ruined it for me, dude. Like, I don't want to ruin it for anybody here. I'll tell you like I'll tell you through text. I'll send you. Yeah. I'll send it to you. But it like, let me put it to you like this. It'd be kind of like not knowing who like the Wizard of Oz is, and then you find out it's Danny DeVito. Like, it was like that level of like, oh no, this is, I don't know if I can't listen or look at this the same anymore. I'm really taken out of it, and I haven't been able to unsee it. If I see the singer on stage, I hear his voice, I'm like, I know what he looks like, and it's not creepy, and I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of like Beetlejuice. Remember Beetlejuice, where she sees the sheets floating around in the hallway. She's out there, like, she thinks it's her parents. And then she's like, are you all like pus and blood and guts under there? And then it's like, oh, it's just Alec Baldwin with glasses on. That's kind of how it felt.
Man, what a good movie.
Yeah, the best. Sorry, I have like a string on my face that keeps dangling. Looks like I'm probably tripping.
No, you're so a bunch of things there. Talking about the mystery of the artist, right? And having, and it's like because if you know how the sausage is made, too clearly, and then maybe you become a vegetarian. Maybe maybe or maybe it turns you off of the art. But like because that's why we have aliases. That's why we have, we take on slightly different attitudes for different projects. And, and some people can get away with just being who they are and everything. But like there's, especially in the metal community, I mean, it's been throughout all different levels of music. You look at somebody like David Bowie or Prince, like it's not that they were necessarily not themselves, but they, especially Bowie. I mean, he could just be a chameleon. Like, no, I'm this now. For a while, I identify as this crazy version of myself, and that which I really love. I love the being able to, pivot on at whenever they feel like it, and I love artists that have the guts to do departure albums, and some, Bowie could say he has multiple departure albums, like
everyone.
Yeah, everyone is like another departure, and then when his last album, Black Star, it was like the departure album.
So weird.
Fuck off, dude. It's so good, and it's like I can't even. That's like, and I cried for like 2 days. I was like, what?
I was so bummed out.
How did you drop this album, knowing you were gonna die, and then I just like I'll forever be picking up the pieces of that, and like it's like
it was haunting.
His
voice was haunting. He was really going hard in the paint on the pitchiness, which is like something that he does very well and makes it listenable. But it literally sounded like, he was like a spirit being recorded. It didn't sound like him alive.
That's a really good. That's a good way of describing how that feels. I feel it's like almost like he delivered that from the other side, in a way.
He definitely knew. He knew something was around the corner. That's for sure, man. That my mom was such a huge David Bowie fan that when he passed away, friends of hers would message me on Facebook and be like, "Tell your mom I'm sorry to hear about David Bowie." like a lot of people. Yeah. Hugely important for me. As like we had Jazzin' for Blue Jeans on VHS when I was a kid. It was like one of my first movies. What else? Well, Labyrinth, obviously. But I've Bowie's one of those people where I do like his old stuff, like Letter to Hermione. I love that. It's a great song. I love the older stuff, but his 90s stuff like really did it for me, and it still does, and I still listen to it. His work with Trent Reznor, obviously huge for me too. Like I'm Afraid of Americans is a huge song for me, but his Outside record reminds me a lot of Black Star. It's like Black Star if Bowie was like at his peak, like obsessed with Luc Besson's Fifth Element. Like it's like a story that resembles the Fifth Element story, but it's like him like narrating it at times
wow.
too. It's the weirdest thing ever, but the music is like, I have to send it to you. I think Adrian Belew played guitar on it.
Oh, I have to go back and revisit that. I don't know. I
It's
can't
a weird
recall that
one.
album.
I'll
That's
send you a track from it that's actually, because it's a little tough to get through. I got to be real with you. Like, it's a little
okay.
weird. By the way, my lights might flicker because we have like everything's frozen here right now in Texas.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah, so I keep seeing the lights flicker. I'm like, oh, let's see if we get through this whole thing. I'll send you a track though. It's really cool to hear Adrian Belew do his kind of weird, Parker Nightfly piezo pickup type of weird sounds over these like really weird chords, and the piano playing is absolutely insane. It's such a cool record. I'll send you a track that's worthless. It's hard to find the good tracks that are like really like, okay, this is going to get me to listen to the record. I'll send you a couple when we get off. I'll send you some stuff to listen to. It's brilliant stuff though. It's if you listen to it with just headphones on and you kind of like isolate yourself from like stimuli, it's like watching a movie. It's very weird.
Cool. That's
yeah.
So, man, I have so many tangents in my brain when I talk to you, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the podcast, because we could just keep going for days. And like one of the things that you mentioned the pitchiness in Bowie's voice, and that made me want to ask you or just chat about all the, because like we're in the future, and you can pitch correct whatever the fuck you want, man. You can make it whatever. And you're in the place where you could be the one controlling some of that stuff. You could be organizing that stuff to around a voice or for a voice, all this stuff. And what an interesting concept that I every once in a while, like I hear, especially classic voices, like stuff that we've heard most of our lives, like Bruce Springsteen, for example. Like I know Bruce, everybody loves the boss. Not everybody,
right,
but a lot of people love the boss, right?
I'm a Jersey boy. You don't got to tell me.
Yeah, okay. So, but the other day, one of his tunes, I don't even remember which song it was, but it came on and I was like, brother, you're an acquired taste a little bit, like it's not as much as like Bob Dylan or like a Dave Mustaine necessarily. Those are all different things, but I find it funny because there's so much, especially here in the future, there's so much kind of effort towards perfection, all these things, and yet the human voice is just like all over the place, right? And
hard to do perfectly twice.
Amen. That's the interesting thing. So anybody that does that stuff like fairly consistently, I'm in awe of. I'm like, how do you? Okay, it's just like I don't, it's, and I love it that it's kind of mysterious to me. It's a little magic, I don't try to figure it out too much. But I'm curious about your experiences with that, like because of the imperfection of the human voice, but yet there's so much of the imperfect things that we love and adore as humans. Maybe it's because we recognize the imperfection, or is it just like, do you think that we just get acclimated to the pitchiness, the slightly out of tune quality in the process?
I think we can get used to it. I think the Deftones are a pretty good example of that, right? Like he's
huge.
He's pretty pitchy at times.
Oh my God.
Which I love, especially when he double tracks, because it creates that kind of chorus, right? Like a chorus pedal is essentially just a delay with some slight pitch. So he kind of creates his own that way, which is really cool. But I think the imperfection side of things is actually a preference for me. Pardon me. 9 Inch Nails would be a good example of that. Like he will forcefully make things uncomfortable by being incorrect by today's standards and yesterday's standards. Actually, a lot of the stuff that I did for the game demo I purposely made mistakes. I would program MIDI to be in places that would disrupt a longer note. So if you could imagine like a MIDI note that was captured when I was playing my MIDI keyboard, I would put these little blips and bloops of like these 30-second notes, like in weird random spots. And I loved it. It made me start saying like, it's like just I'm peppering the MIDI now, like just throw weird stuff in there, and it would do really weird stuff that is an artifact that you can't recreate with a plugin or something like that. So I think like I'm starting to kind of chase the idea of like stepping outside of comfort, especially with guitar as well too. And I'll give credit to Kale from Viljarta and Humanity's Last Breath. He's such an uncommon guitar player. Him and Greg from Car Bomb are like, and Tozen, obviously. Just some of the weirder, more experimental, like really chasing like a hologram, you know, of like what is guitar supposed to be. It's like, and they keep going, and then they reach, and they're like, oh, it's not there, and then they keep going, and it gets weirder. Those are huge inspirations just on thought and conceptualization. Not so much on playing. I'm not like trying to sound like those guys. I can't, but just their idea of doing something weird. For this game demo, I did a lot of weird stuff on guitar, and it's kind of my thing now, and I'm going to keep following it, which is like doing these huge bends. Like, which is why like the Evertune on the H string that you sent me is like, if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been able to get anything done, honestly. Like, to be completely frank, like any other guitar, I would lose time tuning it. And we're talking about doing bends from like, I would say some of them are like 4-hole steps to like 6-hole steps, and then like quad tracking it. It's a total nightmare, but it has a sound. It sounds like your guitar is elastic. It's very weird and unique, and it's, to my ears, reminds me of early Nine Inch Nails and like a lot of his weird intervals that he did and weird things that he did with pitch bending and modulation. So I'm just trying to find my own way by navigating that, by specifically ignoring the concept of like pitch and melody and how we arrive at certain things. So it's been a lot of fun kind of messing with that, and those bands are hugely inspirational for that, just in concept.
Car Bomb, man, Greg, holy shit. I saw them for the first time live finally when Tosin came through. The Animals played a couple blocks here from my house, and Car Bomb was right before them, and Alluvial opened up with Wes Hauk. Yeah. Talk about just a monster trio of guitar players on the stage. Like, I
was rooting for Wes to get that Pantera gig. Like, something in my bones is like, he got that gig and he didn't. I was like, well, I don't know if he was up for it, but I'm like, he should have been the guy. That would have been amazing.
So that's a great side mission here verbally is for years I know Rex Brown well, and we talked, and I had my time on and off with Zach, and I love them both. They're great. And for the first few years that started being suggested that this was going to be the thing, because Zach was Dime's friend and all this stuff. Right. Zach was like, hey, maybe if it's like maybe it's not just me on guitar, like that's kind of, I'm cool. Maybe I'll go, awesome. And I thought, man, that would be the shit. And can you imagine? I mean, you could even, I think you could do it with both drums and guitar, and I think it would have been maybe even better received. It's not that I think that this lineup is bad. I'm going to go see it. Dude. They're my boys. I'm going. But but if Ola England and Wes Hauk were rotated in with Zach, come on, dude, that would have been amazing. Fucking thing of all time. And they're the young guns, and they're not even that young anymore, but they're the guys. And
Dave Davidson too from Revocation. He would have been great for that
Pantera? Too. Yeah. He's. I
can't remember. We toured together in 2010, and I'm pretty sure he's slightly a Dimebag fan. I can't remember.
It makes sense.
I know that my guys were in my band, but I'm pretty sure he was. But he could absolutely rip that up the same way. Yeah, it would be unique. He would do a cool thing with it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a legion of other players out there that can slay, but those handful of guys that we're talking about should have been up for consideration. But I know that financially, to try to get even just Zach on there and get Charlie out there, and let alone Phil and Rex, I'm sure they looked at the pie and they're like, well, hey, the pie is only going to be so big for so long. Let's go with our homies. And and honestly, Rex and Phil probably know nothing about the guys that were like
Right.
about Wes or Ola, really. I don't know.
Well, actually, so Phil loves that band Portal I was mentioning before.
Oh.
And his band that he has, the Illegals. I don't know if it was them, but one of his bands that he was in recently did covers of Portal as like a warm-up song.
Whoa.
Which by the way, when you hear Portal, you're gonna go, what? Why? Weird. He loved them. In fact, weird story. I don't know. Well, I guess Lane probably wouldn't care. Do you know Lane from Tony Danza, Tap Dance Extravaganza?
I don't know
original.
Lane.
Oh, okay.
No.
He was the original guitar player. He's been a friend of mine for like over a decade. We're good buddies. We actually were going to start a band together with Josh and Bob from A Life Once Lost, and we wrote some stuff, but we all just got super busy.
Josh Travis?
Yeah.
Sick.
So Lane had been asked, I think it was by Chris Arp from Psyopus. I can't remember the whole lineage of this whole thing. It was a long time ago, but Chris reached out to Lane about writing some music for Phil Anselmo that was like this band Portal, because he liked him so much. And Lane reached out to me and was like, hey, dude, would you like to be involved in this? I know you're into this weird stuff. And I remember at the time being like, duh, dude, like Phil Anselmo, absolutely. And Lane's down in New Orleans too. So he's been to Phil's house and they became friends and everything.
Cool.
But yeah, originally we were, I think, like, if I remember correctly, like me, Lane, and then I think Chris Arp, like we were all supposed to write this music for Phil, but he ended up getting, he's Phil Anselmo. So like, who knows? He probably got pulled in 15 different directions and then it just didn't happen. But that was something that, like, that's one of those things. I still have the emails like from Lane, like with Phil in the email. And I just remember being like, this is one of my favorite bands on the planet. Like 5 Minutes Alone, when I saw that video, dude, those strings rattling, I was like, I want to be that when I'm older.
Yeah. No, I mean, I it's no secret that how Pantera is like the ultimate number one big band for me, is like formative. I had listened to some metal. I mean, I was listening to rock and metal before Pantera, but I just wasn't like, I wasn't a metal head, and right. I didn't like, I listened to Metallica, and it was also for me, that was, kind of the timing emergent, like my parents were Christian, trying to get me to go to church all the time. And when I heard my buddy's older brother was always like, yeah, Master of Puppets, dude, Master of Puppets. This is like when this was, and I was like, that sounds totally evil to me, and I probably shouldn't listen to it, Right. But then they played me Sanitarium, and I heard like the mellow, and I was like,
so good.
Okay, I like that one song, from Metallica. Right. And then it seemed like, and we listened to a little bit of Cowboys from Hell. I remember it was like on Headbangers Ball at one point, but it was when Vulgar Display dropped, and my buddy Jake Williford, man, I remember we were driving from our shitty little town 30 miles from here over to Chico, and we were in this little tiny army green Toyota truck, and he just had it blasting, and he knew all the lyrics already. It was like only been out a week. Dang. And I was just like, but when it finally, I remember when it finally like kind of let up, you turned it down, I was like, I have to get this tape. I mean, like, we're going to go somewhere where I can buy this right now. Right.
Gotta do it.
Like, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, cause I was mad at, I was 16 and just mad about the world and my dad and not understanding me and all the things, like, we all
went through that.
Yep. Shit. Right.
It was that mode.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. I actually have there. It felt like an external voice for my angst, I finally really like connected that. Before that was like all kind of hip hop, pop, whatever, just listen to whatever, guitar oriented. I didn't know, right. But that turn, and then starting to like really tune into what Dime was doing and picking up a guitar. I was like, oh, that's
another level.
That's a magician. I can, all right. Somebody has, and there's a lot of Dime worship, and I'm still like at the forefront of it. I'm still like, I still look back at what he achieved, and there's not really anybody that can even lay claim to the same thing. I mean, not that you would ever land on the same thing, but it was such a Zen thing that he figured out, He had the wicked chops, but he always held it. He had that Texas hold it back ZZ Top.
Oh, totally.
Feel thing that like he injected into this, man. I miss him forever, man.
And his energy.
Yeah.
Who can play like him right now that can also run around stage and jump and like has also a great personality off stage, like hilarious guy who was friends with everybody, pranking people. Actually, I remember on the way home from our tour with Revocation in 2010, we were driving. I don't know where we were. It was a long drive. It was our last day, so we were on our way home. But we got picked up because we got into a van accident like the second day of the tour in Pennsylvania. Yeah, destroyed the van. It was really bad. It was actually, I think it was Periphery's van. No,
wow.
they used to rent the same van as us from this guy, and it got completely totaled. So we were in like a rental most of it, and then we had to drop off our rental back in Akron, Ohio, and get back to New Jersey. And Todd Stern, he's the bass player for Psychroptic now. He was our guitar player on that tour, and his bandmates came and picked him up in their touring van for his old band. They were called a Bassinate, and they had a VHS player in it, and they had those Pantera VHS compilation. Yeah. Dude, so good. It made that like 8-hour drive fly by because I think there was 2 or 3 of them. And it was just all the antics and the fireworks and all the crazy, and what's his name? Kirk
Weinstein from Crowbar.
Yeah, dude, from Crowbar. Oh man. He was like him back in those days was like even more intimidating somehow. I don't know how that's possible, how you can be more intimidating younger, but man, it just was a different time, you know. I don't think I would have fit it. Like Revocation dudes party, let me tell you something. They're business and they get their things done, but like those dudes are like a cross between Pantera and like Motley Crue sometimes. Well, they used to be. I'm sure they calmed down a little bit, but man, do they know how to throw down. Like those guys are crazy compared to us. We're like nerds, you know. Like I'm more like, for me, my band that really kind of made me feel related to was Mudvayne, which I know is kind of like kind of late in the game. I still listen to metal before that, but when Mudvayne came out, I was like, oh cool, like these guys are angry and have their own issues, but they're also like into like sci-fi movies and books and stuff. And I was like, oh cool. Yeah, because I was never like quite the full tilt like pissed off kid. I was always like a little pissed off, but also kind of like I just want to like watch sci-fi movies and like read weird stuff.
That's fair enough, man.
Yeah.
Takes all kinds, and we, you know, that's the good thing about metal and our expression in the music is that there's so many flavors, and you end up creating your own, you know, subset of the flavors that you enjoy the most, you know. And between, you know, if you have enough influences, then not everybody really knows where you got the stuff after a while, because you're like,
that's important. That's important. Yeah. I talk to a lot of people in metal about, well, how do you get into composing? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm just like, well, I don't know. But I can tell you that metal people do have a place in the composing world. And I would love for more people to do it, because I find metalheads to be, generally speaking, much more open-minded than the average person who listens to music, like outside of our community. I find metal people to be more accepting of different styles of music, and to be, a lot of metalheads are musicologists in their own right too, which I really like a lot. And I think that that's a huge advantage, because ultimately the more you listen to, the better you can be at communicating music. It's kind of like a language. If you only know a certain amount of words, then you can only write a certain amount of, you know, pages of your thoughts. And then if you're on the opposite side of that, where you read a lot of books and you learn a lot of words, and you can write endlessly. And I think that that's metalheads. I say metalheads because we're both old enough to know that. I don't know what these younger kids call it, honestly. Like I don't know if they have a name for it, but you know, like we like a lot of music. Like you, for example, you listen to a lot of the same, like we listen to a lot of the same stuff, the Erykah Badu and you know, all the cool R&B stuff. Like it has its place in the metal vocabulary too. Like there's a lot to be taken from it, and it translates into composing as well. You know, some of the stuff I've done for Marvel, I've had to reach into that and do stuff that's really like kind of like Tony like chord vocabulary type of stuff. Like really,
hell yeah.
They were like a cross between like jazz and like house music sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
just being able to say yes to something is really important for composing. If somebody's like, can you write music like this? You don't want to say no. You want to be able to say yes. So I use that as a challenge where it's like, this call for music is like bossa nova with like this type of thing, and I don't know that other word. I'm like, I better learn that. That's important. So, and I think metal people tend to be more open-minded. So yeah.
Tend to be, yeah. I know a few that are pretty stuck in their lane.
It does happen. Yeah.
You know, and it's like it's the true metal
big four.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, oh no, I only really listen to thrash metal, you know,
Right.
and they kind of like they can kind of consider themselves purebloods of some kind, you know, and
they dress like janitors.
Yeah.
They got like the white high top sneakers and like a leather jacket and like holes in their black jeans. Yeah.
Or just black, just black on black, which I know that, you know, like the 90s Metallica, you know, kind of vibe, which, hey man, I no issue with anybody doing their thing. I think that I always tell the story of like when I was in I did 2 years of a music performance degree program up in Seattle, and
cool.
you know, just I had this weird opportunity. I had gotten laid off from my job in the natural health industry, me and my ex-wife, and we both got laid off a week from each other. And she was at a chiropractic place, and I was at this natural health dispensary, and like it was not like a weed dispensary back then. It was like actual herbs and spices and stuff. But it was for an ND clinic, which was all naturopathic. So, you know, it was incredible. I miss it nowadays. I'm like, I wish I had the health program I had back then. They just, I could see an ND like any day of the week I wanted to, and all this stuff. And
that's really cool.
You know, now it's like a 6-month wait in my area to like get in to see a naturopathic doctor, because they're, you know, an hour, 90-minute sessions. Anyway, I'm digressing. During that time, the universe just like dropped us from our natural health jobs. It was the weirdest thing. And we went to the unemployment department, and they said, well, here, you know, you can sign up for unemployment and all this stuff, but also you might go check out this program. Worker retraining grants are available if you ever thought about going to school, if you want to retrain into a different career. You know, there's a list of in-demand occupations in King County, so go check it out. I was like, we should go check that out. She's like, yeah, okay, let's go check it out. She played guitar and sang, and we go to this meeting, and we look at the list, and like there's 3 columns of like occupations, you know, dental hygienist and all these things. And right in the middle third, like in the middle of the page, it says music performance. And I was like,
weird, right in the middle.
I was like, yeah, right in the middle, 3
surrounded
columns.
by dentists.
Surrounded by, yeah, all these other occupations that like nobody that I know wants to do. But and I looked at the lady. I said, hey, is this a typo? Because I mean, are you gonna pay me to go back to school and learn more about music? She's like, actually, in King County, Seattle greater area, music performance is in-demand occupation. Wow. And so yes, you can go back to school. I looked at my ex, I was like, I don't know what you're gonna do. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm definitely doing that. They're giving me
that one.
Yeah. And she's like, actually, you know, that sounds good. So, you know, we spent 2 years going to school and doing that. In that, I got to dabble in all these little things. I learned the basics for, you know, digital recording and stuff like that. But I had this jazz improv class, and this kind of old, not too old, but like kind of curmudgeon jazz teacher guy. Like he was just, his name was Steve Kim, and great dude, but like very stoic. Kind of looked at you, squinted eyes, looked around, you know, always kind of like felt like he was disapproving of you, you know?
Like, you why don't you know everything already?
Are you dumb? It's almost like the way they look. I'm like, are you a fucking idiot? It's like, but I'll never forget, man. There's probably 10 of us in this little session, and he was, you know, trying to explain like the tenets of jazz improv and like and stuff. And I, you know, there was a couple moments. One of them was, he's like, look, man, let's vamp in A. Let's go. Okay, you start in the piano, you're doing this, you're doing that, and like, let's go. And we are all kind of just like such noobs around it. We're like A minor, or like you know, like a Dorian, like we're trying to figure out, like, he's like, just play it.
Just go.
you
Yeah.
know, and then we still we're kind of weirded out, and he walked over. He's like, look, all right, so bam, and like put his whole forearm on the piano. He's like,
And just smashed all the notes. I love it.
he's like, that's A. Let's go. Get into it. Come on.
That's actually a good lesson.
And I was like shocked. Everybody was shocked. Everybody woke up and we're like, oh, okay. So let's just figure it out. It's like we kind of
Just
hobbled
you just
ourselves
gotta
together.
jump in.
And one of the other things, like he did that to us, and like just like I'm still quivering from this slam like all of these years later. Like, okay, sorry, sir. I'll play an A. Let's go. And I remember I gave him my first CD from the band. We had already released it, and I said, hey man, this is what I'm up to. Like, so if I don't understand all your jazz stuff, like it's because I'm just a stoner like metalhead dude, and I'm trying to figure it out. And he went and I remember he came back that like the next session, he's like, okay, so I listened to a couple of your tunes, and that's cool. He's like, are you open to hearing some advice? And I said, yeah, of course. And he says, man, if you want to be a good metal player, do your best, don't listen to a lot of metal all the time. It's like, that's not how this is going to work. If you actually want to break ground in a field, it's great to study the field, but you have to leave that field alone, because that's all the people that have already done it. And if
that's great.
You're in the process of doing it a different way. So make sure and listen to all the other things that even remotely interest you. Let them seep into your listening so that you can be a much more wide scope of the reflection of what it is that you're trying to do. And I'll never forget that. I'm like, well, that's good, because like I haven't always been a metalhead. I like a lot of other things, and it almost gave me this weird license to not be such a douchebag. Like Dillinger escape plan's the fucking coolest thing that ever happened.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they are, but
yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the average person can't access it.
Right. Exactly. No, that man, you got a great lesson out of that. I think like one of the hardest things with music is yes, listen to a lot and get really good at it. Like, you got to focus on something at some point. You got to, like, everybody's sat down and just focused on one thing for a while, but you also got to know when you're kind of sterilizing your music, like if it's like, if it all just sounds the same all the way through the whole time, and then you put out another record, it's like, oh, it's just like a tighter version of the last record. Well, time to move on, listen to something else, try something else, because it's a balancing act. It's like, listen to a lot of music outside of your element, but also get really good at something too, which is like, how do you do both? And I guess like the answer is you don't for a long time. You spend most of your time not being good at it or perfecting it, and you just have to be cool with that really long road. But yeah, I mean, I get restless with music, so I can't. I get uncomfortable listening to the same things. I noticed that that's not super common, I guess. I mean, I guess it kind of is, because nowadays people kind of rely on Spotify to tell them what to listen to. But it's kind of hard to get bored with millions of bands. But it's also easier to make music. So there's a lot of bands that sound the same, kind of, or within the same territory. So I guess it's just one of those things where the more you listen to, the better. I think that this problem is an across the board issue, though. I feel like the composer world is the same thing. Like, people just get caught up in Hans Zimmer and John Williams and, like Thomas Newton Howard, like all these people, they're just like super caught up in these top of the line guys who are like the crushers. And it's like the in-betweeners are what's cool to me. I really like Colin Stetson is a good example. He did the movie Hereditary. He's also the sax player for Arcade Fire, but he's a metal guy. He likes Meshuggah. He likes Wolves in the Throne Room. Like, he's a very diverse guy. And then like Ludwig Göransson coming into the composing world and doing he's doing Oppenheimer. He did Mandalorian. He did Tenet.
Oh.
He's another guy. Like, he's probably more similar to like you and I, where like weird kind of like R&B jazz background, but also a metal guy too. He's like kind of weirder dudes who are willing to throw like a trap beat with like orchestra in the middle of like a plane heist scene. Like that's so much cooler to me than like the old guard. It's just me personally. I love the old guard. I learned all that stuff. I listen to it all the time. I own the records, but I like the weird stuff. And that when I hear something uncommon, it makes me excited, and I'll like what I'm watching or listening to so much more just because that person took a risk, you know? And I think that that's kind of what people play it safe. You know, what's the safest thing you could do right now? I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, why? Because it's going to guarantee you like flavor of the moment status, or do you want to be here long term? Well, then go weird, be you, do your own thing. Look at Greg from Car Bomb. He's been doing it since they were Neck. You know, Neck, his band Neck before Car Bomb was so good. It was like Deftones on acid. It was so insane.
I don't know Neck.
Wow. Oh, dude. I think the record is called Should Fist My Eye or something like that. Some weird tongue twister thing. But dude, they have this song called, oh God, I can't remember. I'll send it to you. I have the CD still. It's so strange and weird. They have this like breakdown that keeps extending and playing random hits, and it just like keeps surprising you that it keeps happening. Like you're like, okay, cool, the song is done, and then there's one more hit. It's so funny. Total trolls. But you look back to their first, you know, they were Neck, and then they broke up, and then they became Car Bomb, and they put out Centralia, however you say it. And then they were signed to Relapse, and then they just keep putting out records, and people aren't really catching on. Weirdos are catching on, you know, alternative, you know, music listeners who like weird stuff are really catching on to it. And now they tour with, you know, the best bands in the world. Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you? Did you ever see their documentary that they did?
Car Bomb?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
It's really good.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of that, and I hope I don't get upset that I don't know that. I'm kind of friends with the guys, and I feel bad that I don't remember. Yeah, I think This Is Why You Do This is what it's called. And it was Car Bomb was on tour with Last Chance to Reason, which is, you know, Michael Lessard was the singer of that band. He's now in the Contortionist. And then they were on tour with the Chariot and Gojira for a little bit. This is like 2006. And Michael, the singer of Car Bomb, did this DIY documentary while on the tour. And it shows them playing in like, you know, barbecue, you know, the like a covered barbecue area in like a playground. Like, you know, they were playing places like that as a band. Car Bomb was with Last Chance to Reason. And then they were playing with Gojira in like, you know, clubs like 300, you know, plus capacity clubs early on. But it was just as like, why are we doing this? This is like, we're playing for nobody in a parking lot, and there's nobody here, and we're losing money. Why do we do this? And it's this documentary just talking to all the bands, like, why are you doing this? It's very fascinating. It's a really interesting documentary. I can't remember why I just brought that up, but man, anybody who's listening to this, that document, it's on YouTube, by the way.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it is humbling and a great testament to the long game. You know, like you just got to keep going. Something will happen eventually. And that's how I felt. Like my band, I've been doing my band since 2004, and like I put my heart and soul into this. I never fucked around with anything. I never drank or did drugs. It's nothing against anybody who does that stuff, but like I didn't want to waste the money on it. That was the only reason I didn't do it. I was like, I can't buy merch for my band if I wasted on anything. And everything I did for years without stopping was that, but like it never really paid back. And then like later on, you know, I'm doing this now, fortunately, but that's like after a decade and change. You know, if I gave up, I wouldn't be, you know, making a living with this stuff. So their documentary is a very similar thing. Like it's a true testament to that. I mean, those guys are also aliens, so I don't know if they actually need to earn money or if they just have some cosmic agreement.
Well, I think it must have been part of why you brought that up is we were talking about stepping out of the norm, right? And part of what happens when we step out of the norm, most of the time, we don't get recognized right away. Most people, all the innovators, almost all in all the fields, they get laughed at first, like, oh, you're not doing it the right way, right? You have to be in tune all the time. You have to go by these rules. These are the rules that that the last generation set up, and you're not doing that. And so each generation, when they step out, the rock and rollers, and then, you know, the punk rockers, and everything that all the progression that has, you know, led us to, you know, being able to have super dope black metal over here, and super dope like new metal still happening, still being made, you know, in the same context, in the same field, has brought us to this place. But staying the course and figuring out why you do it is, I mean, that's the question, right? Like, if you don't know why you do it, then you know, you might want to answer that question at some point, or stop doing it and do something that you know why you're doing it on some level, right? And like, I think there was a point in our little band, you know, in Seattle, where I felt like, okay, well, I was doing all the numbers, and I was like, we're not making any money. We have a few new fans after the last few years. That's cool. I mean, we have more people showing up. We do sell a little bit of merch, but we rarely ever break even. We're usually always losing money around everything that we do. So I remember having a talk with the band and being like, okay, like I know this might sound you know, silly to you guys, but like, if we're not doing this because we love it, because we love the act of doing it, then I don't know that we should be doing it, you know, because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. We're spending all of our money on band practice, rehearsal places, and CDs that nobody really buys, you know. I mean, and you know, out of 1,000 printed, we, you know, sell 300. That's great. I got 700 CDs to go.
Yeah, what do I do with all these?
You know, yeah. We
donate them.
Yeah, give them away, you know.
Right.
We actually, for a while, I'd have a few in my back pocket and go into local CD stores and just
drop them in.
Just drop them into, like,
genius. I never thought to do that ever.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. You know, you could still do it. I mean, like, you just leave them somewhere and like, hey, how much for this? Like, oh, it's not in the system. I don't even know what it is. What is that?
I don't know.
Ends up in the nickel bin.
$10?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, $5. I don't know. You know.
Oh my god, I wish I did that. We had some cool record stores in New Jersey that would have been perfect. Or like Hot Topic, just like planting them in Hot Topic, which was like
totally
historically the most unfriendly place to bands. Like they at one point, I remember if you went in there for those of people who started a band within the last 5 years, you used to have to like actually go out and promote your music to people. There was no internet place to do it, really. You know, you had to like, you know, print pieces of paper with your show information on it and hand it to a human. You go to do that at a Hot Topic and they would tell you, no, we have a binder for that. You can put it in the binder. That's it. No, we're not going to put it at the register. We're not really in this for the music.
Yeah,
we need to sell, you know, belly button rings.
Yeah, and t-shirts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is cool. I mean, hey, listen, if your band was cool enough to get a t-shirt in Hot Topic at some point, that band was making money, which was a huge feat in those days, because that was a weird time, man. The early 2000s until I feel like it was just like 6 years ago. I don't even know. COVID's really blurred everything for me, but I feel like there was a time where like it didn't matter who it was in a band. That person was probably working a day job, probably doing something that they don't love. But now I'm like, I think a lot of these people are like this is what they do. I know people who haven't ever played on a stage that are playing metal music, who are literally like, can pay their bills with Spotify royalties. That blows my mind. It's a totally different time. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. I'm happy for that. That's great.
Yeah.
Why waste your time schlepping, you know, pizza boxes back and forth if you could be like, you know, just making music?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the blessing and the curse. It's the good news and the bad news, because, you know, just like, you know, yeah, I'm glad that the youth of today are able to stand on the shoulders of us giants.
Right.
But you know, and be able to use, you know, Spotify and YouTube to their advantage and all that stuff, and bypass X amount of the trivial shit. At the same time, I feel super bad for the modern you know, youth trying to get out there and do the thing, because not having to figure out how do we afford a van?
Right. They don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Like how do oh, we're broke down on the side of the road in an area we know nothing about.
Life lessons.
Yeah, all these things. Oh,
yeah.
Where are we sleeping tonight? Oh, that guy at the end of the bar said we could sleep at his house, and we get there and it's maybe a borderline like mass murderer guy.
It's
like,
True Detective scene. Yeah.
all these things, and I simultaneously don't wish that upon anybody. At the
Right.
same time, man, it's made my life and my experience so much more colorful. And I feel like, there's a certain amount of character building in like overcoming challenges. And
Yes.
if there's not enough, like if life doesn't squeeze you, I mean, it will eventually, one way or another, you're going to get the squeeze. But
Right.
in this particular realm with your art, with your project, if it goes too smoothly, I feel bad for you, because at some point it's going to smack you in the face, and it's almost better that it happens early on.
Agreed.
So that you get roughed up a little bit and you're like, okay, we're going to slow it down a little bit and do this first, because we realized you got to do that first.
Yeah.
And then, move on, because whatever. I mean, who am I to say? The kids these days, maybe they know in something that we kind of don't in some ways, I don't know. But
yeah, something to us that might be kind of like, oh, big deal to them might feel like having to, deal with all the stuff that you deal with in a band, but probably not, like scientifically, probably not the same thing. There's a totally different feeling in your physical body of, my van broke down in the middle of nowhere and I don't have a lot of money in my bank account. I'm going to call everybody I can, see if I can get some money together and make this happen. Or do we go home, versus like, oh no, my account got hacked on TikTok and I lost 800,000 followers. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Oh, well, I don't know if science would agree that those are the same experience, but I think like mentally there could be some, it could feel similar. I don't know. We're trying to, be empathetic here, and I don't know if it's real.
Well, it's not fully real on this end of it, because I think that it's, yeah, you could say that, making videos for an Instagram or a TikTok following that is next to nil could be akin to, adjacent from, playing to bar stools in a random town you've never been in,
Right.
Okay, on the coast of Oregon somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's not
from a
quite,
toilet somewhere.
yeah, it's not quite the same, because you have to hump your tube amplifier, if you're lucky enough to afford that maybe you have backup tubes for, that maybe you can, like, if something goes down on your 2-week tour, you can remedy the situation. But most likely you're breaking your back every night helping the drummer and the bass player move their huge ass amount of shit, and
Right.
and trying to sort it out and not be mad at the opening band for going on too long, or whatever. Or you're the opening band, and that next band is pissed off because you haven't figured out how to get your shit off the stage in time.
Oh man.
That's
a good lesson to learn.
I remember that the first couple of times we played, and we were just like him, Han, like acting like rock stars, like, yeah, oh yeah, it's nice. Thanks so much for coming out. And meanwhile, the other band is like, these fucking kids, get them the fuck off the stage. We're like, what? Damn. Oh, sorry. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry.
Dude, when we toured with Leprous in 2016, Leprous is from Norway. I think that was their first tour here. We played their first USA show. And then, we got asked to do their tour, very luckily. And we toured, there was another band on it, Earthside, really cool band. I don't know if they're still putting out music, but really cool stuff. And then there was one more band. But man, we were like, in some ways, kind of the grumpy men, because we had already like done. USA is hard, dude. When Europeans come here, they're like, they don't understand how we do what we do and why we are the way that we are. They're very confused by it. We're much more like strict about things here, I think. Well, in my opinion. But we, like, when the band before us was behind on set, my singer and I would go up and tell the guys in the band, like, we're just letting you know, every minute that you take too long, you're getting cut. Because if you cut into that, you're cutting into our set, and then Leprous loses, which is not happening. So like, we had to make sure that local bands, if there was a local band, we would tell them like, hey dude, like you're going to have to cut it off in 3 minutes. I don't care if the song's 12 minutes long, like you're going to have to abbreviate it. And if they didn't, we would literally go over to the sound guy and be like, turn them the fuck off now. Like, tell them this is it, give them a warning and get them off. Dude, we had to, because like, you think about, like, when you're a tour support, you have a responsibility to that headlining band, especially if they came all the way from Norway. So we kind of felt this responsibility to not screw over the band behind us, which Earthside was way on top of us about that stuff too. And those guys were like, you guys have to get going. Like, you got to start playing like immediately or you're going to lose a song. So like we were all like that on one another. So the local bands that played with us on that tour, if anybody's listening who was on that tour with us, I am sorry for us being dicks, but that's just the way it is, man. Like I remember my singer Oded, he's from Israel. You know, everybody there like is in the IDF. They're all very like, you know, like very to the point. I remember him at Complex in Glendale just going up to the sound guy and be like, turn this band off. And the guy looked at him, he's like, really? Like right now? And he's like, turn him off now or I'll do it. Like you have to, you know, it's kind of, these lessons, by the way, that we're talking about. I feel like, because I was 17 when I started my band in high school, all of my lessons I learned was from being a little idiot around grownups that were in bands that wouldn't let me get away with murder, that would call me on my shit. Hey dude, quit lying, you know, quit being a bullshit artist. Like it doesn't work with us. Like everything I learned, a big part of my work ethic and my personality is shaped by being raised by the music community that I was a part of as a kid. And I really do. I'm with you where I feel like that's a missing experience. That the adversity of dealing with a lot of people is crucial to finding your armor. You know, what kind of armor are you wearing? Are you wearing cloth armor? Well, that's not going to stop anything. Not even, you know, a paintball could get through that. But when you're in a metal band in the early 2000s or at any point where you had to go out on the road and like deal with stuff, you come back wearing like adamantium, you know, like you're something else when you come back, dude. It's hard.
Yeah, it wasn't till our third tour that we actually caught even any kind of stride around the shows, having people show up for us out of our hometown, where we were all based out of Seattle, and we came back. We were breaking even, and we broke even, and then like we got bonus somehow. I forget like the last night we played in Reno, I think, and a bunch of friends came out and bought shirts for like $50 a piece. You know, like we love you. Like they're only $10 or $15.
They're like
shirts.
tipping you.
Yeah, basically tipping us, but you know, but we were like, oh, we were doing something right this time, you know, like and part of what you did right that third or fifth or sixth time when it finally clicked is that you did it without all that stuff those other times, right? And I know that's the part that I think that is difficult for people that are just getting into anything, like and you're not great at right away, like is it doesn't feel like it in the moment, but man, all those fuck ups, all those screw ups, those are actually building towards you actually being able to handle when it real hits, when rubber meets the road finally, you know, and just like you said, like you would, I mean, can you imagine just being handed, like, I mean, you could be studying in a vacuum and composition and composing and all the things, but had you not had all that road like tension in your history, and you wouldn't understand a lot of the context around the people that you're able to work with now. Like, I mean,
right. Yeah, that's a great point.
You know, like that's part of what I see it for myself. Like the fact that I've been on the road at all, been broke down, had to sleep in questionable places, all these things. When I get online and I'm interfacing with a new artist, I'm like, I feel like I have, even though I haven't toured on your level or their level, I know just enough to have empathy,
a little insight. Yeah.
To like, at least like,
absolutely.
Oh, you know, if it was tough for us and we barely had anything riding on it and you have everything riding on it, oh man, I can only imagine, you know?
Yeah. Like if it's your source of income for while you're at home too, I mean, that's horrifying, man. The music world is a scary place to put your eggs in a basket. You know, it's a tough thing. It's kind of the reason why I say like, be cool pivoting if you have to, you know, like if you're a dude who's in a band and all of a sudden somebody comes out and says, hey, here's an opportunity to still do music, but try, what would you be cool with doing this? And it pays, like either open up a new lane on your highway or pivot. There's nothing wrong with that, because really at the end of the day, as long as you are doing something, you can always do what you love on the side. You know what I mean? Like for me, like my band, I we aren't planning on putting out music for the foreseeable future, but I'm not putting it to rest by any means, but like, it's just not a focus right now. And I still do what I love. I still get to make music that I love. It's just, it's different, but you don't have to give up, you know? So I always tell people, like, if somebody asks you, hey man, will you write music for my cartoon or something like that? Like we're pitching to Adult Swim or something like that. Just say yes and do it. Get the job, get paid to, because working in music will sharpen you in any regard. It doesn't matter what you're doing. As long as you're doing work in music instead of, you know, some other remedial job, anything else that's not relevant. And if you do work a job, work in something relevant, you know, like you work with nothing but music artists, and you also do, you know, things outside of that, but that's because you're passionate about it. But other people who it's like, yeah, I work at, you know, Staples and stuff like that. It's like, dude, just work at Guitar Center. Do literally anything that's got a guitar in the building or a piano or somebody singing. Do something like that, because you need to have that reminder of that world around you at all times. I worked out of the music industry for a total of 1.5 years, and it was some of the worst years of my entire life. I literally couldn't go home and create music. I had no drive whatsoever because I was so worn out by the irrelevance of the goal that I had in my life. And everything else before and after that, it's always been music. Like, even if it's just, you know, starting out at Sam Ash as a kid, 16 years old, sitting at the door checking in your stuff to make sure, you know, you're not going to, you know, sneak a Les Paul into your empty case or something. Like, dude, like anything works. Work in a record store. I have a cousin, Eddie. He just turned 18 years old. He's been in the same punk band for like four years now, and he's booking his first tour. I'm super proud of him. And he called me recently and was like, hey, you know, Aunt Marianne said you can give me some tips on like how to deal with this. So I get on the phone with him and I'm just giving him all these tips, and he's like trying to figure out a job. And I'm like, dude, work anywhere musical. Stop doing the grocery store thing. Stop doing the Lowe's and Home Depot. You'll have no drive, dude. It just sticks a syringe in and pulls out. And by the end of the day, you get home, it's just, you're drained from it. So if you got to drive 45 minutes to work at, you know, Drum City Guitarland in Colorado, do it, you know, do whatever you got to do. But man, please don't work at another Home Depot or something unless you're going to start building shelves for a living, dude. Keep it music.
Which is cool, man.
It's totally fine.
I love your advice. I think that, I mean, I've given similar advice through the years because people ask me, you know, it's like similar kind of thing, adjacent. I mean, like, how did you become a composer? How did you become an artist relations person? How did you become a product developer? Well, it wasn't a straight line, number one, but one of the number one ingredients is that I knew early on, after I did a shit ton of crazy jobs, like, and still tried to do music. And there was a point where we were releasing our second EP, and, you know, but life was so tough, working all these other jobs. And somebody said, oh yeah, you know, basically it's a longer story, but they said, you know, you want to do this job over here, working in the industry. And it all got clear. I was working at music stores. I was giving guitar lessons to little kids. You know, I was doing whatever I could, working at a guitar store. Sometimes there was a point where I was doing all three of those things. I was going to school. I was going to school for music, giving guitar lessons to the neighborhood kids, working a day or two at the CD store and a day or two at the guitar store. And that was when somebody said, hey, do you want to get, you know, health benefits and work just one job in the industry? And I was like,
right. So enticing.
Dude. Yeah, dude, I'm in. Like, let's go. And yeah, you know, you might not make as much money as if you were, you know, running the department at Home Depot. But keeping your head in the game and learning all the facets of the thing, I think is super important. The fact that I know how I was there for so many CD release days. Like, I know,
so cool.
Like, I know what that, you know, what the thing is. I mean, it's not even really a thing anymore. So,
right. I know. Oh,
but I used to line up at midnight, man. I mean, at Tower Records to wait for the thing, you know, and I did it. I mean, I actually knew somebody at the local Tower Records here. And so when Trendkill came out, I stopped in the day before and I go, come on, I know you got it back there. And he's like, all right, yeah. He went back, sold me. I go, I need a tape and a CD, bro, because I got a tape player in the truck, and I got a CD
player at home.
CD player at home. He's like, all right. And my buddies back in Corning didn't know that I was hooking it up, and I got to listen to the album on the way over there, just like losing my mind.
So
I mean,
awesome.
can you imagine? I mean, I just the first time hearing the Great Southern Trendkill, like that thing, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait, oh my god, what's going on? What? That's good. I would listen to Dime, so oh my god, and then I got to come over to where 3 or 4 of my best buds were all hanging out at one person's house, and I go, I got a new CD, check this out, and I put it on, and everybody's like, what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah,
so
yeah,
angry.
This is a new Pantera, it just came out tomorrow. They're like, fuck, like it's one of the most, but there's very rare experiences like that these days, because like they don't, you're going to hear a single, you're going to know it's dropping. I don't know. It's like, it's delivered to your phone. It's, the adversity in even getting to the music is the barrier to it is so low. Right. And I think that's, again, it's the same thing that we keep coming around to. Like, if you don't have to work for it, like your appreciation, your enmeshment with it is probably kind of low too. If it takes you a long time to get to the destination, man, when you get there, watch out, man. It's time to enjoy it, really, right? Like, it's a little sweeter because of that. And I know all that stuff, but like it's one of the things that I think is still important. So if you find yourself in a zone where, like, man, this is difficult, I'm stepping out of the box, good. And nobody's paying attention. Oh, hey, not right now. But
not right now. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you refine it. You keep like that whole thing of like, again, I'm a Alan Watts head. Like he repeats this thing. He says, the fool who persists in his folly eventually becomes wise. Right. And
that's great words.
I hear it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So like, even if what you're doing now is laughed at or scoffed at or whatever, if it feels like if it's a yes to you, like, just double down on it, man, because eventually, the quivering in your voice, the uneasiness in your hands, all that's going to mellow out at some point, and it's going to get refined, and you're going to be like, I don't know, listen to this.
I think, and I also think that there's a fan for everything out there. Like, there's somebody out there who's going to like what you're doing. And, even in like moments where like you feel like you pissed people off, it's like, you probably did, but there's still probably people who like you. You just got to be cool with like it not working out, and then like just wait for it to work out. It's kind of like it's an endless kind of curve that keeps changing constantly. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's never going to just be consistently perfect and great all the time. You just got to kind of roll with the punches. Dude, that quote from Alan Watts is like, if anything, so applicable to comedians. I mean, look at those guys. I mean, and gals,
good point.
They literally are like modern court jesters in a lot of ways. And they've leaned into it. And it's this very similar game to what we do in music, where it's, you play these crappy dive bars and you play for chicken wings or something, and then like you get paid $5 and you have to go outside and stand on a corner and promote yourself. And then like, if you just stick with it long enough, like you might end up like selling out, some huge arena or something like that someday, or you get a Netflix series or whatever it is. And, you just got to stick with it. It's the same thing. But that quote that's a good one, man. I don't know a lot about Alan Watts. I'm going to have to, those quotes are like quotes to live by. I got to get into that.
I'll send you a couple things to check out.
Yeah, that's great.
I've got almost this entire like lecture library on tape, but well, and I along the comedian thread, I always hear, I'm a Rogan fan. I listen to his stuff, and I listen to a lot of his comedian interviews and stuff, and I love when they talk about how talk about their own personal bombing, or like somebody close that's huge now, that like they were there when they were just bombing night after night and like no good, nobody gave a fuck. And you're like, yeah, and then Chris Rock, like he's, you're like, what? Like that guy? Like, of course each one of them had to suck horribly at the thing. You might even have a natural penchant or a natural talent towards the thing. Doesn't mean you're going to come out the gate and actually really, win anybody over in the first 10 or 15 or 100 times you do it, but if you enjoy doing it, man, like study it, and listen and watch the other people that are in that field. You're like ascendant. Your trajectory to where you're at wasn't a straight line either. Oh,
Right.
okay, cool.
No,
All right.
I'm not the only person in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, dude, it is interesting to hear, because like one thing we don't really experience in music is the same level of criticism that you receive live in the moment as a comedian, which we're very lucky, right? Like
Yeah.
if we miss a note or mess up, the person who's going to be the harshest about it is going to probably be somebody in the band or yourself. Yeah. Yeah, my guitar player PJ and I, we would finish playing and nobody probably noticed this one note that we would play that would always be out of tune by that point in the set. And we would like finish, hand our guitars, to our dude Tommy, the guy who would take the guitars from us. We'd give it to him and then walk outside and walk around the block and just cool down because of how mad we were that one note would be out of tune. Nobody else would ever notice, ever. It didn't even matter if it was captured on video. Nobody would notice that one note. I mean, maybe somebody would, but not like a vocal person. But a comedian, on the other hand, if they even stammer a joke, that's like literally like missing the beat in music. It's a beat. And and if your joke's not delivering, like let's say that joke right now is like it's off color because something just happened, like somebody just passed away and you just made fun of them or something, you lost the whole room. And then the air gets sucked out of the room. Music, that doesn't really happen, man. Like, how many mistakes have you made that like literally you felt I'd rather die right now? I can't believe our samples played I can't believe our click track is playing through the front of house right now. Why did we do that? It's humiliating, and it's like, dude, nobody cares. Everybody's just happy to be here.
Super forgivable in the music industry. Yeah. And people, again, the music industry, I mean, comedy, I don't know enough about, but I kind of can feel into what you're saying around that. And I agree. The thing about music, right, is like people remember how you made them feel. They won't always remember all the things that you said or the little moments, because it's so fleeting, and they're getting, most of the time in a metal thing, they're getting blasted with sound waves, so it's like a kinesthetic thing too. Like, it's not, they're just like, oh yeah, well, I was in the pit, man. I didn't worry about the singer being off pitch for that one part. I didn't remember. Whatever, man, you guys, your riffs slay, like, so I'm in.
And you're in your head, you're like, were you at the same show? Were you in a weird spot in the room where like the waves hit you and like it was tuned somehow? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, if you ever like listen back to early 2000s recordings too, like, man, actually earlier than that, Fear Factory. Like, I was listening to, I think it was Lynchpin or something. I can't remember what it was, man. Those kicks are not tight. Like, to my ears now, I'm like, it sounds like it's like misfiring or something. When I first heard that, and for a long time, maybe until like 3 or 4 years ago, I thought it was perfect. Like, my ears just grew into being able to identify that. I'm like, the average person who's at a show doesn't have the acuity to hear things the way that you do as a person who's played your song 800 times before this one night. This is the first time they're hearing it. Their body is feeling different things. Everything's different for them in that moment. You got to be cool to just, getting some puncture wounds from yourself. That's all, just like stop hitting yourself.
On the flip side, though, like everything being recorded nowadays, you can imagine all the greats that have super memorable guitar lines and stuff. Yeah. And then they get aged, they get fat, and they go on tour. And then there's just a barrage of videos of, oh, dude, they don't got it no more, bro.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
It's sad. Sometimes you got to hang it up,
Yeah.
Hang it up. Do an autobiography or something, like let's not do this. Just as long as people don't do whatever Steven Seagal did with guitar. That's fine.
Jesus. Yeah.
that was like something like, do we really need this other than to laugh at this?
Hey, thanks for the comic relief.
He's actually a pretty decent blues guitar player from what I remember, but still is kind of like, hey dude, what do we, I remember he did like a TV show where it was like Steven Seagal pretending to be a cop or something like that in like New Orleans. He was like an honorable police officer in his Catahoula or whatever it is that's there. I don't know what it's called. This is strange.
Yeah.
Some people just go off.
strange times, man. You know, especially when you have to pivot. You know, like in your career. You know, that's a
Yeah.
classic case. It doesn't always
Yeah.
work, but
Yeah.
I want to talk about some gear with you a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So I would love to know about your early days with guitar and guitar picks. Like, tell me about what you remember about your first guitar picks. Was there anybody that influenced you, like a teacher or something? And how
Yeah.
did you get to play what you use now?
So I was very fortunate. I started playing guitar. Somebody left a guitar at my house as a kid. I was hugely into music, but I didn't play an instrument. I wanted to play drums. I come from like a drummer family, and somebody left a guitar at my house with 3 strings on it, and I wanted to learn how to play "Sour Girl" by Stone Temple Pilots really badly. I don't know why that song. I love the music video. So I learned it on this guitar. Didn't know how to tune. I just figured it out however it was set up, which 3 strings, literally, like not strings in succession either. They were all over the place. And then I just got really into it. And I was also hugely into, I wasn't Christian, but I loved Christian metal bands. So there was a Christian record store by my high school, and I bought X-Toll, I bought Living Sacrifice.
Dude, those 2 are some of my favorites right
huge,
there.
Huge.
Living Sacrifice was the thing for me.
So heavy. Ludacris, Under Oath. I went to high school in Tampa, so Under Oath, they were a couple years older than me, but some of the guys went to my high school, and there was somebody else that I really liked a lot from back in those days. I can't remember now, but yeah, just Blindside, I think I liked a lot too back in those days. But I liked all this stuff that was like really challenging, and I wanted desperately to play like that. And I also loved Mudvayne. So I had this guitar, and I just took it seriously and started playing. And over time, dude, within like the first year, I don't know what happened, but like something clicked where I just understood how to communicate. My hands, like I could feel my coordination for some reason. Like I was like really conscious of coordination at this time, and I was obsessed with Dillinger Escape Plan. Like deeply obsessed with them. I saw them, I was 15 years old, and I was a big kid at 15, 6'4" at the time. So like, and I had like, I was already growing hair. I'm Italian. So like I was already getting kind of hairy. So I remember I snuck in to go see Dillinger Escape Plan on tour, this band called All Else Failed. And do you remember All American Rejects? They were on that show too. Very strange. I'm pretty sure it was them. Oh no, you know what? That was a different tour. That was CKY. It was Dillinger Escape Plan, All Else Failed, and a band called Time in Malta. And I saw it play live and was like, this is insane. I want to do this. So then I would go to Sam Ash all the time in Tampa, and basically waste everybody's time there just asking questions and talking to these guys. I'm still friends. The guy who's a store manager, Jason Filippini, I'm still friends with him since I was a kid. He just was very patient with me, and I'd be like, hey, how do you get this sound? What is this? What is a pinch harmonic? Like all this stuff. And then I moved up to my dad's in New Jersey, and they got me a job at Sam Ash, and we lived 10 minutes away from Manhattan. So we literally had like the best musicians known to man at the time. Like Al Giamiola would come in our store, and Lenny White from Return to Forever, and Redman, like all these like crazy people would just come, just walk it. I need speakers, like whatever. And I was the door guy. So I got to like, interact with every single person who came in, but it also gave me access to finding musicians for my band, which I inevitably wanted to do on my own after playing with some older guys who were very patient with a 16-year-old who couldn't drive at the time. And it was rough. But then I started my own band, and I dove in hard, dude. Like Between the Bear to Me self-titled album, like really made me want to write a record, man. Like as soon as I heard Silent Circus on mp3.com, I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And I had an Ibanez S370DX was my first like real guitar. Like one of the S bodies with like this metallic meteor finish. And I actually got that because of Between the Bear. I mean, they used to play those back in the day. And I had my dad bought me like a Marshall stack for my birthday. It was like a Marshall AVT, like a solid state type of thing.
Sure.
Played that for as long as I could. And then I graduated the next year to a 5150, which is still one of my favorite amps on the planet. There's one right behind me. Um, I working at Sam Ash, I had access to the best gear that you could possibly get in the state, man. It was just all there. Like, we had a Universe. I love that thing.
Wow.
I also, very strangely, was an early player of Carvin. I had a DC 700. Actually, we did like a small tour with Rivers of Nile, and Brody was
Whoa.
Brody and I have been friends for a really long time. They opened for us in 2010 on tour and mopped the floor with all of us. Not revocation. They didn't mop the floor with revocation, but man, they made us look bad. Brody was he was an Ibanez guy for a long time, and then when I was touring, like maybe when we did our little mini tour, I was using this like quilted maple trans black DC 700, and that was like my first step back into 7-string territory. But I had whatever Tony McAlpine was using for a while too, back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
I think it was also a DC 700.
I think it was actually.
Yeah. But I'm an Alan Holdsworth nerd. Like I had Sydney just bought me Reaching for the Uncommon Chord, his chord book. I had that back in those days too. I was your prototypical, like, I wasn't a great guitar player, but I loved ridiculous guitar playing. I loved Frank Gambale. I loved all that stuff, right?
Same.
Couldn't really do much of it. I could do like the Origin style, like sweep picking early on in life. They're really fast, like laser sweep stuff, but I couldn't do it slow, couldn't do it clean, and just would bite off way more than I can chew. But I loved jazz fusion stuff, and man, that Alan Holdsworth sound, I still love it. I love listening to it. I love everybody who's ever played with him. I love all that stuff. So I always wanted what they had. And I was also really into textures quite a bit too. So I also wanted to be able to do like really heavy kind of, djenty stuff. And this is like, gent wasn't a word, you know what I mean? Back in those days. So just working in a music store, I would just always buy and sell gear. I think I had what they call gas now. I had that early on too. I would never be satisfied with one guitar, but I always had that DC 700 was like something I had for a very long time. But yeah, I had the Stephen Carpenter 7-string for a while, the SC, like the ESP one. I used that. We recorded with Eric Rattan in 2005. I was still in high school, and a total
Morbid Angel, right?
Yeah, Morbid Angel. Yeah. Total pain in the ass. But I think he's in Cannibal Corpse now. Very, very patient guy. He was from New Jersey, so I kind of like got him a little bit, but like, man, he was very strict. I liked that about him a lot. But I used the Stephen Carpenter ESP version, his 7-string, way back in the day. But I was always like Bart from Textures. His guitar playing and like the chords that he used, like it just connected that Alan Holdsworth and Meshuggah thing that I wanted so badly as a younger guy. And I just kind of chased that for a long time. And we went through a 6-string phase. It was like, all right, I'm tired of the 7-string stuff. Let's do 6 strings. Played some Jacksons here and there, played some ESPs here and there. But man, I've owned more guitars than you could possibly imagine. It's crazy. And I've always really seemed to gravitate towards the Carvin being something that I've always missed, because when I got rid of it, it was because I went back to 6-string and I was like, I'm not really using this anymore. And it was a guitar. I've looked for that guy over the last like 8 years. I've been trying to find that guy. Hey, what was that guy's name? I'll be like sitting there on the couch and think about that guitar. Like, what was his name? I'm smarter now. I'm older. I should be able to find this guy. Everybody's on Facebook now, and I can't find him because I want that guitar back. It was so perfect at the time. And like, I miss the feeling of playing that guitar too. So
maybe we should try and recreate it.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I mean, I think ultimately at the end of the day, like I remember being at NAMM 2016 and like Jeff had one of his builds. I think it was a headless, and it was just like a swamp ash or something like that. And I just remember playing it, and I vibed with that guitar so hard. This like Japanese guy came over. We swapped cards. He came over, was like, can I film you playing it? I was like, okay. I didn't know. I just was really vibing in that moment with the guitar, and it crushed it. So as soon as, like, literally the moment I opened the case and took the Aries out, the 8-string that you sent, I felt the neck and was like, this is literally, it feels like that neck that I know. I mean, it's refined and different, you know, like it's more modernized at this point, but man, there's something very different about that feeling that was some like nostalgia thing kicked in immediately. It was a really good feeling. But I've had a lot of stuff. I've always never really tried to like limit myself to being like represented by the gear. It's always like a tool.
Sure.
But I do have these instruments where I definitely felt like I was at my best, you know, and that was one of those moments. There's a video. We played the Frack the Gods tour in New York City. Our manager at the time, Ben Umanov, also managed Textures for a while. We actually picked them up from the airport and kind of showed them the USA ropes when they first got here. There's a documentary on metal injection with Periphery, and we're on stage sound checking, and Misha's doing his interview, and you know he's like, oh yeah, Bonnier Code's playing. There's a band from that's local that we know, blah blah. And then in the background, we had to start sound checking, and we started sound checking in the middle of his interview, and I'm playing that exact Carvin.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, that's the only record I have that I actually played that guitar back in those days.
Oh man, I really feel you on the having a lot of guitars. It's like we have a lot of parallels in like you know, I was a big Ibanez guy for a while. My first one was a 540 Radius S style, just prior to the Joe Satriani.
Yeah,
and
the Road series, was that what they were called?
No, it wasn't a Roadstar.
Saber.
I did have a Roadstar, but this was like it was that kind of like blue, purple, jewel blue, and rounded edges. Didn't have the S with S.
But yeah,
like
literally,
yeah, it was almost the JS, the Joe Satriani.
Yeah.
But I got that from one of my first guitar teachers, and then that made me. I ended up getting a Reb Beach, the black and gold Reb Beach with the cutout in the back.
Yeah, dude.
I was like so super hyped.
That's a sought after guitar now too.
I know, and I you know, I have so many guitars. I don't need to buy guitars.
Right.
I have guitars that are being made for me, right? Like, but but like I do lust after that. And then I had a Jackson era, and in the Jackson era, I was my top guitar was a Charvel 750 XL. 1990 was you ever see the Sean Lane guitar?
Yeah, dude.
The yellow one?
Yeah.
I had that exact. I mean, not the exact, but the exact model with the
red. Just not that color.
Yeah. No, it was the same color. Everything.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah, it just wasn't his guitar, but I had that guitar. It was short scale, Gibson scale in but a shredder with a Floyd Rose. The pickups were closer together because of the short scale. Had the upside down shark fins, and it had a 3/4 inch at least arch maple top quilted, and I didn't know why it was amazing when I got it. I got it for $400 in a pawn shop.
Oh my God.
And by the time, but every time we recorded, I would bring that guitar, and two different engineers, 2 different times said, hey, wait a second, you switch guitars or something? I said, yeah. It's like, I'm using this ESP now. I had an ESP Vintage Black also. And that one was really comfortable too. But like, yeah, that one doesn't sound half as good as that yellow guitar. Wow. Go get the yellow guitar back and play that. We can use that for that other guitar for filler stuff, but that should be your main axe every time you come in here. I was like, oh, okay. And then I started like looking it up and found out it was only made like between 90 and 91 out of the Japanese custom shop. They just tried something new that year and put these guitars out and then never made them again. And I'm like,
it makes sense that they didn't, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah, but like it's one of those weird things. And then when the band broke up like the 3rd time in 2008, man, I was like, this guitar just makes me think of being on stage, and like I was just being a dummy, and I sold it. And by the time I kind of knew what I had a little bit, you know, and when I put it up for sale, I think I put it up for like $1,200 or something, because I put EMGs in it and all that stuff, and some guy in Germany was like, you know, battling it out with somebody else on eBay, and I ended up getting like $2,000 for it, and I was like, man, I only paid $400 for it. This is okay. Here, I made all this money.
Damn, that's amazing.
And then ever since, I'm like, oh wait, you can't get those guitars really. You have to like pry them out of people's hands.
Yeah, you'll be lucky if you find one ever again.
And they're super beat up. I do find them every once in a while, but they're almost always beat up, and they want way too much money for a beat up guitar, or they're in great shape and they want $3 to $4 to $5 or something.
Ridiculous.
It's insanity. But
that was the Frank Gambale guitar for me too. The
really?
Ibanez one. that like Tweety Bird yellow one. I always wanted that guitar, and then I finally got one. Yeah, I mean that was the perk of working at Sam Ash. Is like we'd have these guys come in, these like haggard like 80s metal guys who'd be like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of stuff, pay my rent, whatever." And it's like you open the case and it's like a polka dot Randy Rhodes that's like a USA, and it's like, and then Frank Gambale is somehow in that mix, and you're like, you tell the store manager, like, I want that guitar. Don't put that on the floor, please.
Yeah,
like, I'm begging you. And then, you get it super cheap. You sell it 4 years later because you don't really use it that much. And now you can't find one ever again.
Nope.
That's a lot of guitars now, though.
No, it's
a lot of cool
true.
stuff. You can't find it. People hold on to it. Mike Mushok's Ibanez, that's like impossible to find.
The vintage Ibanez market is, they're, ravenous.
I've always had collectors. Gemsite has always been. Like Gemsite still looks like it's from like the early 90s or the mid 90s, but like that website, I used to just drool over that website. But I also used to just get the carving catalog in the mail, kind of like East Bay. I used to collect sneakers when I was a kid, and because I played sports, and I used to just get the magazine just so I could look at sneakers. And I used to get the carving catalog in the mail just so I can like drool over Tony McAlpine and
my very first guitar teacher, Dan Bryant here in Chico, he had when I met him and started taking lessons, he was a big Al Di Meola fan, so that's why I have my Al Di Meola poster back here. Man, other than the fact that he's like just legend. And Dan had a all Koa Carvin DC 600 series of some kind, and he had it was tongue oiled with an ebony fretboard and a Floyd Rose that he had set up immaculately. Like everyone, you touch an instrument in his room would be a mess. Like you go to hang out, and he's like, bro, you need to get somebody to clean up. He's like, yeah. Hold this guitar, and he's like, I could tell all of his psychic energy went into
the guitar. Like cereal bowls all over the room, but the guitar is like perfect. 100%.
But he taught me something through all that, and I didn't know anything about carving until like really, like I've been seeing the catalogs, but then he was like, oh, I can't wait to order another one. Someday they're going to make an 8-string with a longer scale length. And he actually, this is the interesting thing. He took he ended up buying one of the first Monkey and Head Corn 7-string.
Oh yeah, I had one of those too.
Yeah, it was a blue. He had the black one. I ended up getting the blue one, and then he because Carvin was what he wanted them to make it, but they weren't making exactly what he wanted. He ended up trying to make an 8-string guitar that was kind of somewhere between an Ibanez RG and like a DC Carvin, and we couldn't find, there was no 8-string like Floyd Roses or like there's very little parts. So he like cut up a hardtail bridge for the lower B and F sharp strings, and then had a Floyd Rose like that he cut out the edge and shoved it up next to each other so that he could have the right amount of spacing, and then he got it all strung up and everything. He's like, yeah, now I don't have pickups. So like what do you do? He stopped it, but I ended up with it for years, and I ended up like trading it off for weed or something later, because I never finished it either. But it was an interesting project, and I was introduced to the Carvin and Al Di Meola back in the day. I actually got a loop back because my question actually was about guitar picks.
Oh, guitar picks,
and I mixed,
yeah.
So I want to redirect you into like, tell me about your guitar picks, like old and new.
I got a bowl of them here.
Yeah, of course you do.
I've millions of picks that I've collected over time.
If you didn't, I'd be weird.
I know, right?
Concerned about you.
I have a problem. I play very hard to the point where I break picks. Like maybe every other like 3 days, if I play consistently, I break them. They can be as heavy as you possibly want. I think it's my grip that I have on it. I apply pressure at like the center point of the guitar, but also on the top, and I bend them. I've played like 1.5s before and broken them. I don't know what happens.
Wow.
I used to use these. These are
oh, interesting.
Everly Star picks. They have a hole in the center that's like jagged, and the only reason I use it is because I I do like a rowing technique with the guitar when I play. So I have this like kind of pinching and pulling thing to get my stroke instead of like doing like this. It's like very
Cool.
kind of economical. I used to use those a lot, but strangely enough, this is actually kind of strange, but I used to work for a musical instrument store before I started composing full time in New Jersey called the Music Den. And I was a creative director. So I got to make us cool stuff. And one of the things that a guitar shop should have is picks with your store on it, right?
Mhm.
So Dunlop, I made these picks for the Music Den, and I don't know if it'll focus.
They got the hologram hot stamp on it.
Yeah, and they're pointy. I still use these picks. I haven't worked for them for 5 years, and I bought a bunch of them before I left, and I love using these things.
It's the T3, right?
I think so. I think that's
It's
right.
got jazz 3-tip and the full
Yeah,
body,
but it's huge. Yep.
Yeah,
This is the best pick I've ever played in my life, and it's great. You know, a lot of people play with the pick kind of parallel to the strings, but I tend to play more on an angle. So there's like, I guess like it just kind of, I don't know. I suck at guitar in my opinion, so I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. I play at a weird angle, and these picks literally, it feels like I'm playing like a cello or something instead, you know, where it's like I'm using a bow instead of a pick basically. So I've always used those. I've also had gravity picks early on reached out to me like a while ago. Can't get into the giant pick thing. Doesn't work for me. You know, I've never, the more gimmicky a pick is, the more I'm kind of turned off by it. You know, I just like a nice flat regular ass pick. You know, I don't really think that much about my right hand, I guess, like when I'm playing, but those Jim Dunlop, I mean, like you can't go wrong with those.
They're the boss. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the gauge on those picks? Do you remember?
It's a one now.
1.0?
Yeah. I will occasionally I will reach over for this Planet Waves, like really flexible acoustic pick for doing tremolo picking. Like if I have to write a song at like 280 BPMs, you got to use a flimsy, you know, for tremolo picking, like it's got to be flimsy because it's just more resistant. So I'll use, and I got that technique, that idea from my friend Mike Darren. He's in a band that toured with Carbon. They're called Circuit of Suns. He's probably the fastest picker I've ever seen in my life. He's warp speed fast, and he uses those and has this really cool like Spanish style kind of like, you know, the way that he plays it. It's the fastest thing I've ever heard. I've never heard anybody pick as fast as him before, and he uses picks that thin. So if he uses it, that's what I use.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a classic thing as far as, I mean, like usually nylons in the Dunlop family, like
there you go.
Yeah. A little thin.
That's what he uses. The gray ones.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah. I even have, I made picks when I was at Dunlop. I got the chance to
that's right. You worked for Dunlop. That's right.
Yeah. 5 years. I was their creative, their artist relations director there.
That's awesome.
And so I had the pleasure of making picks or help organizing. I didn't make them personally, but helping design them and get the orders in and be the contact person for a lot of artists. Right. And I did Frederick Thorndahl's signature pick.
Oh, he had a signature pick.
Oh, you should.
Was it made out of like some weird material that the government deems illegal?
You'd think you should put that in your Amazon cart like immediately, like, and just order a little pack of the Meshuggah picks, because
that's awesome.
They are I don't have, I probably have it here somewhere, but
I'm gonna look it up.
It was super fun because well, I
can type Frederick Thorndahl into Amazon and it'll come up with something.
It probably will. It probably will show up with I don't know if it's going to have his name, but Meshuggah Dunlop pick. It basically, he was using the 1.0. He was going back and forth between 1.0.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, dude. So he was doing the nylon 1.0 that has very light grip, like kind of, you know, but it's this standard kind of thing on the nylon, right? But it's a thick, not this thin. It was thicker. This is a 0.60, but he was using that, and then he was using the Max Grip 1.0, which has the super grippy surface. and he was going back and forth between those. And he was like, I want kind of one pick to rule them all. And so he's like, it's got to be, it's got to be like, he called it the cat tongue. It's got to be like the cat tongue.
Oh, I have one of those too. Yeah.
But also, but he wants to be able to switch positions live with it. So he doesn't want to be, too locked in. Now, I mean, the pick we end up creating, I feel, is every bit as grippy as a max grip. In fact, maybe even a tiny bit more, but he ended up falling in love with it. And it was a combination of nylon and some kind of space age stiffener that we had there at Dunlop. And
that was my nickname in high school. Space age stiffener.
Love it.
That's the dumbest thing I've said for a long time.
No, come on, man. Let's gotta take it not too seriously. But yeah, so he's had a thing for 33 for a long time.
Yes.
It just so happens that I have a thing for 333.
Oh.
And I didn't even know why I was really into the 333 thing for a long time, but I figured it out. The universe gave me a message, and it was at Tower Records.
Oh.
I was selling somebody. I had the number 333 coming up for me a long time. This is in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I was waking up at 3:33 in the morning, like, whoa, and looking at my digital clock, and it was like 3:33. And I'm like,
that is very odd.
That's so weird. And I would do it multiple days in a row. And like, once you create a pattern, sometimes it's hard to get out of the pattern, especially when I'm asleep and like
you look at the clock and you're like,
and then I was a buddy of mine said, hey man, like I heard you're looking for a room to rent. And I said, yeah. I said, well, we got these 3 interconnected rooms at my house. And I was like, it's vacant. And as long as you're cool with us growing weed. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I'm like, how much? He's like, oh, it's the even split is $333 a month. And this is a college town back in that, it's like people hear that like, you paid $300 a month for rent. I'm like, yeah, that's just I'm older crazy than you. And so, so here we are. But
we made $4 a week back in those days.
Bro, I was making $5.75 an hour at Tower Records as a supervisor. Man, I was calling the shots and counting the money. I had to make that extra 75 cents an hour. But I had all these things coming up. I started drawing about it and all this stuff. And then I was there I was selling tickets at the ticket. I was at the Ticketmaster desk, and I sold a CD to somebody, and the change was $3.33. And I was like, there's that stupid number again. And the guy was like, what? And I kind of just like rambled off a bunch of stuff like I did to you just now. Oh man, it's this number, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, maybe it's like the day of the year you're born on or something, man. And like walks out. And I look over at this woman who I hadn't even started dating yet, but she's my ex-wife. I look over across and I go, hey Heather, did you hear what he just said? And she's like, yeah, you are like you're in November, you're towards the end of the year. You should do the math. And so I'm like doing the math, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like 1 day off. That's super close. How is that possible? And she's like, wait a second. Because she was born in 76. I'm born in 76. She's like, you're 76. 76 is a leap year. You are on the 333rd day of the year.
Whoa.
I was like,
that's crazy.
And so I don't know what that fucking means,
I think that dude was from Quantum Leap, dude.
Bro, like that dude. I haven't thought about that show in a long time, but I loved that show.
I haven't either until this very moment. Now I want to rewatch it.
Good, yeah, me too. Good reference. So anyway, I say all that to say that when I started working with Frederick, I was like, hey man, I know you're a 33 guy. Also, there's this weird story, let me tell you. And he's like, whoa, and so I was like, I'm the guy to make your pick. Like there's nobody else on the planet. I mean,
let me do it.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, okay, so let's do it. And when we did the artwork, or we did the grip, he's like, can it be like a bunch of 33s, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, let's do that. So we started messing around with the placement of how the 33s would end up in the grip. And he's like, I want it to be kind of an old English 33. So it's kind of like, kind of like sharp and then curved. Cool. And like, that's cool. And I was like, he's like, if you want to use, do you want to use my name? I was like, what, or do you want to use Meshuggah? And I said, well, whatever you want, man. I mean, I want it to be your pick. And he's like, let's use Meshuggah. And I said, okay, well, it's okay if we use Dunlop, like Dunlop USA on the other side or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And this is all just kind of like casual chatting back and forth. And then as I sent all the stuff over to our art department, the art department was starting to arrange everything. And we had a couple different iterations of what it looked like. It all hit me. It was like, I was like, whoa, like when you get these pics and you look at them, you're like, holy shit. Like it's like 3 rows of 33s. And then the innermost, like right next to where it says Meshuggah, it ends up where there's 3 threes. You can just, next to each other.
No way.
So there's like 333 in close to it. Right. And I was like, wow. I go, give me that one. I think that one looks so good. I hope it works out. I hope he likes it. So they gave me the art for that. And as I was writing the email and sending him the stuff, it occurred to me that the word Meshuggah is 9 letters, 333.
Right.
And
awesome.
I flipped it over. I looked and I'm like, it occurred to me that Dunlop USA is 9 letters.
There's a lot of that's wild.
What? So and we weren't even really trying, it was just like the 333 guy and the 33 guy kind of trying to make a pick. And
that's crazy.
I don't even know, man. It's like it's beyond my scope of understanding.
Yeah, numerology is fascinating. There's a cool book on that I go to the bookstore like every week we're total nerds. There's a book on numerology. I'll grab it for you and send it to you. I have one of them's called the Trivium. It's like yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Bro, stop it. What are you doing? So the one that you're talking about is called Quadrivium.
That's it. Quadrivium. Yeah.
And you're going to fucking flip right fucking now, dude. Because
I love those books.
I bought that book and gave it to Frederick,
dude.
Long before we did the pick. And I gave that book to 2 people, actually 3 people. The first one was Frederick. Second one was Devin. And the third one was Moon Zappa.
Dude, that's so awesome.
I bought that book 3 times.
Moon Zappa?
Moon Unit Zappa. Yeah.
Moon Unit?
Moon Unit.
The inventor of the Valley Girl?
Yeah. She's my homie.
I love that.
Like,
dude, that's awesome.
She's the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast. That's a whole nother story.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, you got to tell me that at some point because I'm a Zappa boy. Ahmet and Dweezil, all of it. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was super all about Zappa growing up. And so I still don't know his whole catalog, but like even not knowing the whole catalog, I knew enough about like Hot Rats and Shut Up and Play Your Guitar and like, a bunch of these, the
Joe's
Overnight,
Garage. Yeah.
Yeah. Joe's Garage, Overnight. Was it Overnight Success or I forget. I've got a bunch of vinyl in here, but I don't even know why we went down that road, to be honest. I don't remember, but I was asking you about picks and you told me about picks and the Meshuggah. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd say in the process of making, I was going to tell you about this because there's there was a moment in time where we were making all these picks for everybody. And I made friends with Justin Timberlake's guitarist, Mike Scott. And I'd known him for a little while and he's like, hey man. And I kept going down there and Justin was playing some of our super thin nylon picks. And I was like, how do we make a Justin Timberlake pick? Come on, man. Like what? And he's like, oh, I'll ask him. And Justin got back and was like, yeah, like, I want an orange pick that's like super thin. What's the thinnest you can make? And we're like, well, I think we make a 0.46. 0.4. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, that's
ultra thin.
Ultra thin. And so we made him these, this is for the Man in the Woods
tour.
Oh,
cool.
It's got a little bit of grip. It's hard to
That's
see
awesome.
But
oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
And then there's this little logo on the other side and stuff.
Almost looks like the Dream Theater logo from.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the Majesty logo almost.
Did they steal from Justin Timberlake?
I think he stole from them.
The Grammy back. Oh yeah, probably.
I think somebody probably had the same design team. It's like, we're just gonna do this for you, Justin. He's like, yeah.
Looks like a mic cradle.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, and so anyway, I'm just chatting about random stuff, but
I have an Al Di Meola pick somewhere from him. He was he was a real asshole to me as a kid, but I appreciate it. Yeah, I have that exact pick somewhere. I got a tube of picks behind me. I'll take a picture. I have the same pick.
I made this one for him.
Insane. I have that pick, dude.
Really?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Well, I mean, he lived in Englewood. I was in Paramus working at Sam Ash, and so why did he come in? Oh, he sold synth pickups, the Roland synth pickups. He sold them to Sam Ash. He got rid of them.
Oh, weird.
I was learning some of his music from his VHS, which I still have, and I was playing it while he was in the store apparently, and he talked shit about my playing to one of the guys that work there. I just started playing guitar pretty recently, dude. This is a hard song. I can't remember what it was, but he was a little bit of an asshole to me too, like directly. But honestly, like, he's allowed. I know some people don't agree with that, but I think it's tough. He might be special. You know what I mean? There's something going on there. He doesn't think like everybody else. So I kind of have to give him a little bit of credit for, back in those days, I don't think we understood people the way that we do now. And I think he might think a little bit differently. So like, maybe it wasn't that he was being an asshole. Maybe he was just being like, very literal with me, you know? Like, it was weird. When I was a kid, man, I got to tell you, I was indignant as all get out when he talked to me. I was like, fuck him. I'll never listen to Al Di Meola again. It took me like 3 weeks and I got over it. But dude, I have that same pick.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure I got it from him that day.
So I think the pick that you have is the OG. It was probably a DeAndrea pick. These picks are
like a jazz guitar pick.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a poly pick or celluloid. I'm not sure. I think it might be a celluloid. But it's like
definitely shiny,
extra heavy, and I think it was made by DeAndrea. And years later, I started coming in. I started into his world, and I know Goombie Ortiz, his longtime percussionist, and so he's always kind of like kept me in the loop with Al D through the years, and he's not an easy guy to deal with at all, man. Like, I've been to all these like sound checks with Al, and I kind of witnessed him kind of crack the whip on the band, and he's always got maybe one or two different
very
people.
Particular.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, the part of me is kind of like, you don't need to be a dick, like the soft, easygoing guy that I am. Right. But also I noticed that he's a Jersey, he's East Coast guy.
Yeah, we're a little different.
And a jazz East Coast guy, a jazz dude that wears a watch. Fucking watch out, he means business.
Oh, like, yeah, dude. That watch is there for a reason.
They know what time it is, and you're fucking late, bro. That's all there is to it.
And he's also who he is because of discipline. So he projects that perspective. That's on him, obviously. I have the same problems. I expect everybody to understand everything I'm trying to get at right away, and I get frustrated. But you can't think like that. Acknowledge it at least, But at the same time, that dude probably learned from somebody who was like that too. His teacher, I don't know who it was. I mean, the guy played with Paco de Lucia, and I don't like, just let him,
bro.
Be a dick, whatever. I don't care, dude. I think you're allowed to. He's like a knight, back in like the medieval times, he would have been a knight who like beheaded a dragon or some shit. If that guy's a dick to you, oh well, he slayed a dragon.
Yeah. I will tell you, there was one little moment where, I mean, he's always been cool. He was out at Petrucci camp out in Long Island a couple of years back, and I went to a couple of years in a row, and so I got to spend more time around him than ever at that point. But prior to that, I was trying to like bring him Dunlop pedals every time he comes through San Francisco or whatever, and there was one day I don't know, I said, oh, I'm going down. Goombie said, hey, we're at the whatever the venue was, at Great American Music Hall or something like that, and I was leaving my office from Dunlop out in Benicia, and I was like, I know they don't need anything, but like, maybe I should grab something random and just kind of have it with me when I come there. Oh, have you checked out this, and so I have all this crap in my office, and I was like, oh, I'll just take something tells me I should bring that delay pedal. Yeah, I'll just bring that delay pedal. And so like I get in the car, drive into the city, walk into the venue during sound check, and Al is having a shit fit because his delay pedal's not working.
Oh,
I'm not fucking kidding you. It's so weird. I
wow.
walk and I'm like, I listened for about a minute and a half, and I catch Goombie. I'm like, hey man. He's like, oh hey Chrys. He's like, I'll be with you. I go, actually, I think I got what you guys need right now. Like, do you want this delay pedal with a tap tempo? Is that what you need? And Al like stops what he bitching and complaining. It's like, are you I go, yeah, I'm Chrys from Dunlop. You remember? He's like, oh yeah. We can use that. I go, it's yours, man. It's got your name on it, man. I don't care. Like, keep it forever. Like, and
wow.
And so he played that night with that delay pedal, and ever since, like in the near future, it was easier for him to remember who I was, and
right, yeah,
the whole thing.
That's monumental.
Yeah, it's like,
damn, that's crazy. That's wild that would happen. So kind of like stars aligning, you know, like you're gonna show up and be like, I have what you need. Just walk in the door. Should I bring that? What if you didn't?
I know. I just witnessed him melt down. And
would this podcast be happening? You know, like who knows?
Might not. You're right. If like the butterfly effect might have just eradicated the possibility of the podcast.
Yeah, if you can, don't quantum leap and remove that pedal from your desk. Whatever you do, leave that there.
I accredit it a little bit to my own intuition, but I also accredit that experience a bit to Jimmy Dunlop himself. Jimmy Dunlop being kind of one of the OG gangsters of artist relations on the planet. Like he grew up with his dad, Jim Dunlop, started the company like the year he was born, like incorporated it the year he was born. So like in 67, I think.
That's bold.
Yeah, like at the year that Jimmy literally his whole life is like he's as old as the company technically is, right?
That's crazy.
And his dad passed away. Weirdly enough, his dad passed away 2 days after I left Dunlop.
Oh, geez.
Which was an interesting dynamic, and because there was, it's a lot. But we made our way through all that time, and but I say this just to give Jimmy props, because you learn from watching how other people hold themselves, and I think that's been one of the major things that I've been able to do, is to like catch the temperature of a room. And how somebody else carries themselves. And when you're working for somebody and you go out and you're an extension of them to some degree, right? Like, yes. Dunlop is paying me to be out here to do work that Jimmy used to do, or it still does. Yeah. But it's like, not everybody has the close connection to the people that they represent, so they don't always hit the mark and this and that. But Jimmy kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey, and he didn't necessarily say, this is how you do it. He just went out and did it in front of me. And I was like, oh, right. So you're this guy to all these people. Okay, so if I'm going to be even half as cool, I got to yourself. Yeah, I got to think ahead a little bit, because he always had a present. He's like, oh no, I've been thinking about you, artist A, B, or C, and I did this for you. Made him new picks that day. That's last minute. It's like, oh, we're going to go down and see so and so. Hey, somebody call up the pick section of this. Like, we're going to do a hot stamp on this color, this gauge, this thing. Let's do it. Wipe all the other projects off the map right now. We're doing this. Chrys has got to leave at 2:00. He's got to be there on time for sound check, and it was like, oh shit. Like, that's so cool. He understood. He really understood. And, do you find that I'm sure like A&R guys, you guys kind of like a lot of you guys know one another. Yeah. I mean, well, and first of all, I'll say, we're AR guys over here, right? Not A&R. Yeah. Sorry. No, you're good. AR guys. Right. So do you find that a lot of people are that way, or is that kind of, because my experience is no, I don't have that experience across the board. And obviously a lot of people who are listening are probably like, I'd take an endorsement from anybody. Fucking don't take it from anybody. There's no point. I used to do a podcast a couple of years ago, and it's too time consuming, but it was called Noise Killer. And the first episode I did was with Al from URM and Doth. And we had Bill from TuneTrack while he was at TuneTrack. Cool. They came on and we talked about endorsements. Like, why get one? Why do people want them so badly? What do you do with an endorsement and all that stuff? And we went over like the reasons for it. And even like to this day, I would say, like, endorsements are kind of,
a weird thing because I'm trying not to even like look at them as that word anymore, because it doesn't really have the meaning anymore to me. To me, it's like, I just want a relationship with a company. That's all I want. I don't need somebody putting me on their website or whatever. Like, it's not about that. Like, I just want to have a relationship with a person that works at this company so we can communicate. And I find that so much more valuable than when I'm just treated like, hey man, what kind of deal can we give you? You know what I mean? Like, how much of a discount or whatever it is, right? And one of my worst experiences with this so far has been working with a company that does endorsements for like anybody, basically. Like, not just anybody, but like people who buy guitars. Basically, customers can just basically become endorsees, right? And I'm like,
Right.
that, and they're a cool guitar company, and I really love their instruments, but that vibe, that idea that there's no value to the hardworking artist who's like leveling up and simultaneously leveling up your company's reputation at the same time. It's like, no, just buy 3 guitars and we'll talk about you all the time. That type of dynamic has soured my pursuit of endorsements, and I've completely changed my perspective of what I wanted for like the last 3 years. Like, I only work with companies that I enjoy the people. That's it. If I get a weird vibe, like, dude, I went to NAMM back in June, and I talked to this one company, and they're like, yeah, like, we'll totally hook you up, whatever you need. Right. And then this one guy was a dick in the booth, and I'm like, I don't want to work with this company. I don't give a shit. I'll buy your synth. I don't need it that badly. Like, it's just for fun. So that guy was a dick. I don't want to deal with that guy. He treated me like, like an asshole a little bit. And I was just like, I'm not going to work with that. So for me, when I work with a company where like I enjoy talking to the people, it feels like you got to reciprocate too. That's something that people are missing completely from the endorsement side of things. Like, these younger people are like, I just want to endorse a guitar company, and they're just excited to do it. Like, you got to do your part, dude. There's a lot of work, get to work, man. You don't need to have an agreement to know that you like, when they slide an agreement your way, you shouldn't have to read it. You should just know that that's you have to do a lot of work. It's a relationship, and people just don't really understand. They don't grasp the concept of this. And so far, I have probably not had an experience like the one that I've had with you in a long time, honestly. Like, it's very unique. I do feel the Jim Dunlop kind of, like, as you're describing him, I feel that kind of, like, in retrospect, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It's special, dude. I have not had that vibe with a lot of people. That's important.
There's a couple OGs still around, and we know Mike Origo over at Ibanez.
Oh, Mike's, yeah, he's great. Yeah, and Tyler. I love those guys.
Mike is one of my favorites. Alex, that was over at Orange for a long time.
What's Alex's last name?
God, why you got to ask me?
Is he at Origin Effects now?
Is he doing? I know he's doing kind of an independent thing with maybe.
Does he do Victory?
Alex
REA?
I'm sorry, Alex.
I think it is the same person that we're talking about.
Fucking Chrys. I don't know why.
I think he does Origin Effects.
Okay, probably.
Yeah, because if it's the Alex that I know, yes, he's also amazing and great.
But he was like at Orange Amps for like maybe a decade or something, and like signed the Mastodon guys. And
it is definitely him. He posts about Brent like every day this week. Yeah, Alex is amazing.
Brain farting on his last name, but yeah, but those are the two that really stand out to me in this scope. I've got there's my buddy Paul DeMaio. It's over at Aristides.
Love Paul.
Too.
Yeah,
we've been homies for a long time. But I think a couple things play into it, right? Is like, who did you kind of mentorship with along the way? There's that. So who set the example of how artist relations is supposed to look? And it's really easy, especially when I started, I feel like there was a lot of people that were had been doing it. And so I kind of took the torch from Ted Kornblum and Steve Dockraden, where Ted Kornblum, his family owned St. Louis Music out in St. Louis, and when they owned Crate, Ampeg, Alvarez guitars, it was all under like one thing, and they had like their own distributorship, for like strings and stuff like that. And Ted wasn't a great mentor, but he was the son of the rich guy, and he had the budget. and I watched him work with, the ZZ Top guys and all the biggest names. He had under wraps, and Steve Dockraden was all punk rock and metal, and he was the guy that was on the streets more or less and could work on the amps and stuff. And you learn from being around the people and seeing how they take care of people and how people talk about them.
Right. Yes.
Right? And you're like, oh, people are like, man, Ted would hook me up whatever I want. Well, he had the budget. That's how he could do it. Like that's how he took care of people. He's like, and there's crazy stories in the Ampeg lexicon of people going, yeah, man, like we barely even got our first our first record deal, and Ted Kornblum had like a truck full of Ampeg gear dropped off at our house, and it was probably like $10,000 worth of stuff. And I was like, yeah, well, my budget is significantly less. Like, can I give you one of those things? Like like I don't have that. It was like
that sets a precedent, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. And Doc Raden, he's still a legend. Everybody talks about Steve.
Well, listen to that last name, dude. He sounds like a Mortal Kombat character.
Absolutely, yeah. Him and his brother Scott, who sadly just passed away, stage 4 cancer. Crazy, like development. Like he found out like and then like a month later, and Scott, huge guitar, drum, bass tech to Tool, Alice in Chains, System of a Down. Big deal. Yeah, I mean he's universally loved in the industry. Everybody know he had huge long dreads down past his butt. Sweetest guy ever. Anyway, I'm side storying so much here. Where was I even going with it? Was just I think that who you get mentored by, plays a lot, and then how are you an artist? Have you experienced it? We talked about that earlier. Like I've been on tour a little bit. I know just enough to like have empathy towards like being broke down, having gear not working, all that stuff, and wanting to be Johnny on the spot for Mike Inez of Alice in Chains when he's like, hey man, my SVT isn't working. I'm like, that's not okay, bro. Like I will overnight the thing. I will send the extra tubes. I'll do the thing. And he's like, oh man, you're the guy, and there's nothing. An artist relations is a thankless job internally most of the time, because most of the people that you work next to, they're like, oh, you're working with you're talking to rock stars again. Oh, must be nice. I have to do spreadsheets and calculations on the, you're like, okay, hey, look, never mind. I'm not going to explain it to you because you don't understand how
you just don't get it.
I stayed extra hours to like help make sure this thing happened. I work nights and weekends. You get to go home and not think about your job. Artist relations is like basically 24/7.
It's 24. Yeah. You're networking all the time. You're on call all the time.
Yeah. And that's like the biggest thing. People go, well, how do I get your job? I go, bro, you don't, because you don't understand how ridiculous of a job it is. If you're going to do it with any, like any type of proficiency, I guess, and when I first started too, I had Devin Townsend was one of my first guys that I around acoustic guitars. He was finishing the Ghost album.
Love that record.
Oh, dude, so good. And I got to be the guy that custom ordered or put together the specs for his baritone guitar that he could help finish the record and then take it on tour with him and all that stuff. And so,
is it baritone acoustic?
Yeah, it was a baritone. It was
cool.
20, baritone for. It was only 26 or 26.5 inch, but it was like a jumbo.
Like C tuning.
Yes, for open C. Yeah,
gotcha.
And that turned out so good. And in the process, kind of getting to know him. This is whatever year that was. I guess 2009, 2008. He looked at me. I remember, and he says, "Look, man, I've been doing this a long time. And I've dealt with a lot of AR guys, and I've been had a lot of smoke blown up my ass around shit." He's like, if there's one thing I can tell you is like, you can always, if you can't do something, just tell me you can't do it. Just right away. Tell me as soon as you know that you can't do it, you're not going to do it, it's not possible, so that we can recalibrate and decide what to do next. Because I've been strung along so many times around guitars, around gear, around all this stuff. And having one of my freaking heroes kind of impart this little thing as I was moving into this, I was like, okay, you're the guy. If that's what I need to do, I mean, I was already going to do.
That's the standard.
Yeah, I was already going to try
We're
to
going to do that
anyway.
anyway. Yeah.
But you made it clear
But I get it.
That's the thing. And ever since I was like, wow, that actually has been the most interesting piece of advice, because I was like, because industry wide, people are like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and then they don't do it, and then they don't do it, and it's not accurate information. And you realize as an artist yourself, as somebody that depends on gear and a timely fashion and all that stuff, that really becomes one of the biggest things. And somebody like Arrigo and Alex Auxier.
Yeah, that's it. Auxier. Yeah.
Yeah. Auxier.
I don't know French. I don't know what it is. He's from Atlanta.
He's fucking hilarious, though.
I love that kid. Yeah. I call him a kid. We're like probably the same age.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, he's been in it for a while. He's great though. I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He sent me this Origin effects pedal, a revival drive. It's literally on my desk forever. It'll never come off the desk. It's the best pedal I've used in ages, and it's crucial for what I'm doing now. So it like lives there. I want a clean desk as much as possible, and the one pedal he first sent me, I'm just like, dude, this is you grand slam on this one. Yeah, he's awesome. He's no bullshit, which I love too. You get on the phone with him, he's not going to bullshit around. He stuck a fucking NASCAR race, like a card in the box with it, like a trading card.
Nice.
It's so weird. I love it.
He's a goofy dude, got a great sense of humor, man.
I love that.
He's on point. And there's like, if you become a dependable person, this is any job, but like in a job where there's mostly charlatans, that oftentimes, because people will get the gig because they don't know who else to give it to, and there's either somebody that's too old that has been doing it, that's out of touch with artists and doesn't serve them well. That's a real common thing. Or it's too young of a person that doesn't really know what's going on. They have a thirst for it, but they don't know how to like be personable and actually be super timely and have a work ethic. So there's that,
you got to find that good balance.
Yeah. And shit, I feel like I feel like you're interviewing me, man.
I mean, it's a conversation,
No, it's good. And I mean, I do want to, for those of you out there that are enjoying the high quality sound of our podcast today, it's brought to you by Roswell microphones, Roswell Pro Audio. And which one are you using there?
This is a K47.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
K47X. Yeah.
This one is the K67X.
I almost used that one, but I tried the other one first.
I got mine in custom purple and black.
Yeah, that one's sick, dude. That's not fair.
Yeah,
purple's my favorite color.
Well, we can fix that. We can fix that. I got a K87 over here too.
But yeah, I know, and you hooked Dan up too. He loves his too.
Yeah.
They're killer, man. And I love the Roswell theme too. I'm all about that. Same.
That it was like, oh, dude, you make great mics, and it's like Roswell, like kind of semi-alien themed. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm in.
Did you hear about? This is another weird tangent. Quickly, did you read? Oh no, I forgot his name. Jacques Vallée. Do you know who Jacques Vallée is?
No.
So Jacques Vallée is. He worked with J. Allen Hynek. J. Allen Hynek was the director of Project Blue Book, which was the government. It was our government would go around and disprove UFO sightings and stuff like that in the 1940s.
Disinformation agents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So J. Allen Hynek was the director, and Jacques Vallée was this young French physicist who worked with him. And he is now currently like the leading person in like Palo Alto or something of looking into this stuff. But strangely enough, Roswell's like a popular one, right? Like that's a very popular one. Right outside of Roswell, I'm from New Mexico. I grew up in New Mexico as a kid. There's White Sands. It's they did like a Boys to Men video there in the 90s, like literally white sand. It's very cool. They used to test missiles out there, and he just put out a book last year. I can't remember what it's called. I'll send you a link to it, but Jacques Vallée put the book out. It's on another incident similar to Roswell that happened before Roswell, which is it's actually really cool because it's very unknown. And he's got pictures in the book. He's got like physics data in it as well. It's very interesting. Similarly, there's another book. Annie Jacobson put out a book called Area 51, and it kind of like ruined my whole perspective of Roswell completely. I don't know if you've read that. I don't know if you've read that book or ever have plans on reading it. I don't want to ever ruin it, because I'll tell you this. Area 51 is more of a book about, like research on like the stealth bomber and the ox carts and stuff like that. It's really cool. It's not all like aliens and UFOs, but the last chapter is about Roswell. And every person I've recommended the book to, when they read the last chapter, their jaws drop. My girlfriend, my aunt, my uncle, they read that last chapter and they're like, oh my God, it's the most plausible scenario for Roswell as a whole. It is crazy.
So two things. A, the White Sands one, is that have to do with like the underground, like there's some underground like labyrinth or something in that area? Was that I don't know.
You're thinking of S4?
Maybe I'm thinking of it's a different like base that was
Thinking of Bob Lazar. Yeah, S4. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's outside of Area 51 in Papoose Lake. It's like the same area. Oh, by the way, the reason why I know about a lot of it about this is because Brucky and I were supposed to pitch for there's something coming out related to that stuff. So we did a lot of research on it. But no, the thing outside of Roswell and White Sands is another crash that happened. And there's a farmer that lived out there, and his kid were both witnesses to this whole thing. This is their story, at least, but this whole book is dedicated to it, and it's more interesting than Roswell, because Roswell's whole thing is like this thing crashed and then there's like all this cover up and stuff, like, unless you read Area 51, which is, I'm telling you, Annie Jacobson's crazy. If you watch Joe Rogan, she was on Joe Rogan a couple times.
Okay, so I think I know that story, and I'm just gonna blurt it out. I think, was she the one that was exposing the whole situation where it's actually they think it was Russia that was potentially manipulating, like putting surgery on
dude,
on like Down syndrome, or like
just children, general children that they found,
putting them in weird crafts and crashing them into the United States as like a fear tactic.
A fear tactic, yeah. So they thought it was
that's so crazy.
What's his name there in Russia? The crazy guy? I'm having a brain fart.
The one that's there now?
Putin? No, no.
Gorbachev?
No. It was before. He was apparently like the good version of like a Russian president. It
Stalin?
Was Stalin. Stalin loved playing mind games, apparently. And apparently he was obsessed with Nikola Tesla, who actually had radio frequency control. Like in his time, he was able to control these boats during the World's Fair, and could remote control things, which is crazy if you think about the time frame. We're talking about the 1800s. So apparently the story goes that this unnamed person in the book is on their deathbed telling this story to Annie Jacobson. Like, he's old, doesn't want his name revealed, doesn't want it to like damper his family history. He feels horrible for a lot of the things that happened. Like, he said that, they performed all these experiments on like people in our country, and like there's all this weird stuff. I mean, granted, like most people who are listening to this right now, their eyes have rolled behind their head and they can no longer see because they're so nauseated by this tinfoil hat shit. But like, dude, I mean, like, come on, who gives a fuck about Putin right now? There's like cooler shit going on, like there's cool stuff going on right now. I mean, obviously what's going on over there is horrible. We got to care about that. But like, in terms of like, you want a cool story to read right now, stop watching Netflix suggestions, read a book, read Area 51, the last chapter. It'll blow your skull open.
Wow. Just
that. So what apparently what they said they did to these kids is they replaced the dome of their head with an adult dome. So it made their head larger on top. Right. So these are like, Nazi experiments basically. And they replaced the eyeballs with horse eyeballs, and did all this like crazy stuff, and we're injecting these kids with all these things, and they kept the kids. They were completely comatose, like they were like alive but like out of it, and they had them in this like orange jello type of substance inside of the craft that crashed in Roswell, and they basically just kept them in that. And at Area 51, they like had those kids in that fluid. I don't know like what the end result was, but the guy who was telling the story to Annie Jacobson on his deathbed was like crying about it to her, telling her like, I'm so ashamed of myself. His wife, as she's hearing this story, is ashamed of him, and like they're going through this whole thing. So yeah, It's fascinating stuff. I mean, even if it's just a story, dude, like, man, that's a story.
But I'll tell you that, so the thing I think is super interesting about that, obviously, is that like we've been led believe so many different possibilities around Roswell, aliens, and all this stuff, and to think that that there was a psyop essentially on, you know, from Russia coming our way to like to incite fear in the general population and our government, you know,
very plausible.
Power, yeah, very plausible. And I mean, there's so many things that you hear. They're like, you know, I'm a tinfoil hat guy. I mean, I've been reading this shit forever. As soon as I heard, I was like, oh shit, might not be what you think it is. I'm in. Tell me more. You know, I'm like, I don't.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating because, you know, like even as you go back into just, I mean, you look back to the way old yogis, you know, and like the East Indian view of the world and the veil of Maya, you know, all these different philosophical ways of like lifting the veil so you can actually see things the way they actually are, and they're and you can be a pretty well-adjusted person that, like, you know, can kind of spot somebody lying and this and that. But the things that are more, you know, subversive are the things that go right in plain sight, the same things that everybody accepts that, like, oh, well, that would never, no. Oh, wait a second. Actually, you know, people are fucking just gross. Like, I mean, like that, I couldn't put it. I mean, if the Nazis did what they did, I can't really, you know, put it past the possibility that this is a thing.
I don't think most people know the extent of all that either. Annie Jacobson obviously had some stock in writing the book that she did, but she did Operation Paperclip, which is, you know, the NASA scientists, like a majority of them in the foundation of NASA were Nazi scientists. Yeah. Working on stuff like tabin, which is like a nerve gas that was so deadly that even Hitler said, no, don't use that. That's not good. And they were testing that stuff in like coal mines, basically in Poland and Germany. They were just testing it, you know, on poor Jewish people that they were taking into these places and making them like dig the tunnels. And then now we're going to test it on you. Would you really like put it past like somebody to do something horrible and horrific? I mean, there's a pretty good record that indicates that you never know, but yeah, dude, it's weird. It's weird because you have all this stuff that comes out in the news, and like, you want people to, like, people say things like, I need proof, right? Like, I need proof. I need to see it with my own eyes. It's like, dude, like, you could put it in the New York Times and it could be literal, like a literal alien shaking hands with Joe Biden. Like, people will be like, that's not real. That's CGI. People just aren't going to believe stuff. It's just people have different levels of interest in wanting to explore outside of their comfort zone. And I mean, I like science fiction. So for me, I read a lot of this stuff from more of like this is just fascinating from a reading perspective. I don't care if it's real or not. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just interested in learning about it, really. But you know, Bob Lazar stuff and Commander David Fravor and all that, the Tic Tac and all that stuff. Dude, Jeremy Corbell, you know, the guy who's kind of the champion for all this stuff. He follows me on Instagram. We've talked about this stuff. Like I'm hoping if he does another documentary, I'm like, dude, you let me know if you need music, dude. I'll do that shit for free, man.
That would be amazing.
I love his documentaries. I love his personality. Like, he's like the Henry Rollins of like the UFO community. He's cool as shit. So like, yeah, dude, like, how can I help you keep doing your thing? Like, I want to, like, you know, I'll do the music for free, dude. I don't give a shit. Just let me know when you need it. So ever since then, we've like literally just follow each other and have our little back and forth once in a while. But I'm fascinated by it. I find it so much more interesting than watching TikTok videos of people doing stupid shit. You know, like it's my dumb. Doug Stanhope, one of my favorite comedians, talked about how he loves football. He's like, I understand that it's dumb, but it's my dumb. You have your dumb. You like to go do your stupid thing. This is my dumb. This is my stupid. Let me have my stupid thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. And I want to backtrack a little bit. I think that the confusion around, or maybe the lack of like belief around, even if there was a real alien landed, shook hands with Biden,
right,
that confusion around that shit is obviously like intentional, like that, like,
right.
And I think that whether aliens are real or not, like the trying to present it constantly through all the different forms of media, you know, is an intentional thing to some degree, not in every case, but like And this is the thing. I think that people that aren't really down the rabbit hole at all, they're just like, oh, I mean, like it's everything's fine, right? Like they don't have any knowledge of all these operations that have happened in the past. Where, I mean, it's like we think about the Nazis experimenting on their own people, but like you said, we brought we collected the last few of them and brought them over here, and
Right.
we continued a lot of their work in slightly different ways and subversive things, the mind control stuff.
Yep.
All
yeah.
this. I'm like, so you'd be crazy to not just do the very simplest math. Like, oh, well, we
Right.
brought Nazis here. They kind of went underground. We started using them with NASA and rockets. We started using them for mind control stuff, and all this. And oh, that's back then. That's like 50 years ago. We wouldn't be using or doing any of that now.
Oh yeah, no,
I mean,
definitely not. Also, too, like people who are so quick to being like, yeah, that's bullshit, like immediately. Fine, that's your opinion, but how much thought did you put into saying that? Like, is that just your gut reaction that that's bullshit right away? At least if you're going to disprove things and you don't like care about something, for example, like you should know about the thing that you don't care about. So like learn about it. It's the same thing about like how you judge people. Shouldn't you know about the culture of people that you're criticizing instead of, just talking shit without having met anybody? Where people, but you know what the thing though is, we're asking people to be better than they are.
Right.
It's like people love hating people they've never met in places they've never been. They love hating on shit that's foreign to them that they don't understand, and it's unfamiliarity makes people very uncomfortable. So as soon as you mention something like that, I mean, like for me, I think that the concept of these UAPs, as they call them now, is fascinating because of how it might prevent World War 7000 from happening. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that I've learned from the hearings that have happened in Congress about this stuff very recently is that there have been instances where Minutemen have reported that they've gone to do nuclear tests, like, launching nuclear missiles, to just do tests. Like they're going to just run a test. They're not going to actually launch anything. And these things like show up in the sky and shut it all down. Which is like our own military has reported that stuff. And it's not like something I found on some weird website. These are congressional hearings you can watch on YouTube. They're made publicly available. Like people in Congress talking about like, yeah, hi, I'm this division general, this thing, that thing at this place. And yeah, we experienced a faulty, test for all of our launch tests at the exact same moment, every single one of them. At the same time, this thing showed up when it was happening. And it's like, you mean to tell me that the world might be saved by things from somewhere else? That's cool. Or maybe they're from here. I don't know. Right. I'm also a fan of ultra terrestrials. That concept is really cool.
Yeah,
like people from Earth 4,000 years ago leaving and coming back and trying to like fix things now that they have better information. That'd be cool. I'm into that.
Dude, I have to say that reminds me of one of the more recent Rick and Morty episodes about the dinosaurs. You ever watch Rick and Morty?
The dinosaurs,
they come back. It was in the very latest season.
I don't think I did see it.
Okay, well, you got to check it out. It's like, it's like basically these UFOs show up and like out walks dinosaurs. They're back because they left, right? They left, and then
when did this come out?
Just into last year. It's
okay. Yeah, I definitely haven't seen it. I got to see it. That sounds
so crazy. It won't even ruin it for you, but I mean, it's a classic scenario where because we don't really know. We look at the fossil record, all these things, we know
we say they were extinct. Yeah.
We think we know X, Y, and Z, but they could have. This is 65 million plus years ago, right? Any trace, if they had technology, we wouldn't know about it, and because it would have disintegrated. There'd be very little, if any. It would have to be encapsulated into some sort of, like the tar or anything like
right.
that, the tar pits and stuff. But the premise is, that they show up and they're like, hey, where's all of us? And they're like, sorry, we like use you for fuel, like, sorry, like, and it's like, but we had such green tech when we left here. And like, so part of the episode is trying to figure out why they went, extinct, and why a comet would hit the planet after some of them left.
Right.
And they're like, oh well, we got everything figured out. So like everybody take a vacation. Like they just fix all the problems on the earth. They're like, nope, now everybody's got enough food. Like nobody has to work, none of this stuff. We're gonna put all the things back on automation, and you guys are good. And like even Rick's like portal gun, they're like, oh, that's so like not good. Like I can actually they give him this new portal gun that's perfect, that like actually works perfectly, and he gets fucking pissed and destroys it. And he's like, no, who are you to do, like come in here and try to run my game? And I'll leave the rest of it for you to check out, but it's kind of interesting.
Sounds great.
To think about the dinosaurs would be the ones that actually like perfected all this shit, and they come back, or they've been here for a long time, and they show up and they're like, yeah, so all those UAPs,
yeah, man,
sorry,
that would be wild. Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I mean, you never know. I mean, how can we say yes or no to anything? How can anything be black and white as definitely not and definitely yes? Some people just hate on imagination too. They just don't. Some people just really don't enjoy being awake, and they just want to shit on stuff without thinking about it. I just think it's fascinating. Doesn't matter if any of it's real. I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, frankly. That's all that what it comes down to. Is it's just plain old interesting. Did you see that there was another documentary that was really good? It was like the first documentary I saw about this stuff where I was like, this is actually a good documentary. It's not just a documentary. I can't remember what it was called. I'll send it to you. It came out a couple of years ago, but they showed this school in Africa in the 80s, and they interviewed these children who had a collective classroom experience with something ascending down and leaving its vessel and projecting images into these children's head. And these kids are in like third grade. And,
wow.
It's like, there's like a couple of white kids, and then there's the kids from Africa, and they're in the middle of nowhere. And they send like one of the top psychologists from Harvard to Africa to interview these kids. And he's like, none of these kids lied to me. They all had the same story. They described the thing exactly the same way. And they all had the same image placed in their head. And it was of technology. Think about this in the 80s. What kid used the word technology? No kid had a cell phone. No kid had an electronic device that they took with them everywhere. Technology is not a common term. And these kids were like, yeah, that we're going to have too much technology, and we're not going to have any air to breathe. And people are going to die from not having air to breathe. And this thing projected that image into all of these kids' head. It was a little thing, and looked like it was wearing a black suit with big eyes, and they all had the same experience. The footage is on YouTube too. This is from the 80s. Think about that is a very interesting time, because there wasn't, I don't really know like what was available that would be promoted to these children at that age, that they would have the same exact experience. It was very fascinating. And the way the documentary was done was they talked to Jesse Marcel, who's the guy who, the weather balloon guy. Remember they tried to say it was a weather balloon? He's the guy. They go through everything in that documentary, man. It's totally fascinating. This stuff is fascinating. It's just from the storytelling perspective. It's cool, man. It's like ghost stories. Like ghost stories are fun. Even if you don't believe it, it's fun to hear it.
Same, dude. One of my favorite podcasts is the derivative of what was it? It was called it's from out of the Bay Area. But the one that spun off is called Spooked. And
okay. And based on the book?
No, it's like they trying to think of the name of the original podcast, but it was it'll come to me later. But they started doing around Halloween every year. They would do ghost stories, and they'd have people that they interview, and they kind of cut in some cool audio and do like music bed. And that became so popular that they had to spin off, and like they have just a Spooked podcast, and it's all these true life ghost stories of weird things happening. And bro, it's like I don't know what to believe, but like there's so many trippy stories on there that I'm like, and you hear these people telling their stories, and they're fucking freaked out, and you're like, oh God, like I don't know. Yeah.
I'll share this one story with you, and I know that people are going to think of me differently for this, and that's fine. But I'm going to start out with taking some responsibility for who I was when I was younger. When I was younger, I definitely fibbed to try and like fit in or come up with cool stories. I was a single child. I know it's not a good excuse, but I fibbed a few times here and there. And I do remember kind of making up a story once upon a time about like seeing something, because like I saw something and I knew exactly what it was, but I was like, man, I could turn this into a cool story. I think I just liked storytelling, which I think I get from my uncle. So I definitely like bullshitted, and at that time that was like the story that I had. This is like 17 years ago. But very like I've really practiced observation and like transparency of something I call, not that I call it, but I've learned about, called radical candor, which is like, just tell people the truth. Say it's gonna hurt, it's gonna sting, but fuck it, dude, just rip the band-aid off before you even say anything. So my girlfriend Sydney is very much a skeptic. She doesn't believe in any of this shit. So when I met her, you couldn't convince her that ghosts were real. I don't think she cared. UFOs, none of that stuff. One of our first conversations was about a lot of this stuff. And I just saw her eyes like a one-armed bandit just spinning. She's like, this is so stupid, dude. She and I were driving to go meet just before we moved to Texas. We were driving in Colorado. We lived kind of close to each other, like 10 minutes away, out on the prairie in Parker, Colorado, which is like 25 minutes from Denver. And I used to live by the airport, close to the airport in Denver, just outside of it by like 15 minutes. So I have a pretty good understanding of the general landscape of the area. She and I were driving to go meet with her brother and his girlfriend, like last dinner we were going to have before we moved. And as we're driving out in the middle of nowhere, and we're driving towards the airport, but we're very far away from it. We've got to be like 15, 20 miles away from it. And we're going up and down these hills on this road called like Dewey Hill or some shit, right? And she's sitting there with me. We're, it's just starting to get to be sundown. And we saw this blue disc type thing just shoot straight down in front of us, like over the hill.
Wow. Based
on where it was and how quickly it moved, it probably was maybe a mile away from us, but we both saw it at the same time. Like I could go get her right now. She's probably in the middle of teaching a piano lesson. I could have her come down. She's such a skeptic. She doesn't believe any of this shit. She doesn't believe me about when I tell her these stories. She's just not a believer. It just doesn't tickle her pickle, as she'll put it. And she saw it with me while we were driving to go see her brother. And she told the story to her brother when we were there. We don't know what we saw. It had this was like nighttime, and it had this weird blue shape to it, and it was humongous, dude. Like, we saw planes when we got to the top of the hill. We saw planes out in the distance. They look like micro machines compared to this thing.
Wow.
So it must have been close to us, and whatever it was quite large too, and it had a body to it. It wasn't just like a blue hoop. It was like some weird thing. I don't know what it was. I can't explain it. I can't tell you for sure what it was, but we definitely 1,000% saw that, both of us at the exact same moment. And she just doesn't buy that shit, but she believes what she saw. It went like that. Like, it moved unlike things that we have, basically. It descended at the speed of, like, who knows?
Did it go back up, or it just descended in front of
you? It went down, and that was it, dude. Gone. It was there was nothing there when we got over the hill.
Wow.
Nothing to be seen. It was very weird. Like, I still have a hard time remembering exactly what I saw, which makes me think when people say that they've seen something, I'm like, how do you remember the details so well? I remember every detail other than what I saw very well. I remember, like what we ate that night. I don't remember what the thing looked like exactly, except for it had a blue kind of hue to the outside of it, and it descended wicked fast, dude. Like, you haven't seen something fall that fast.
That's kind of common though, when you see something you haven't seen before. Right, like it's difficult to make sense of it, right?
Yeah,
a phenomenon like that.
Yeah, this is the only time I've ever talked about this publicly, either like semi-publicly, but like it's as real as it gets, man. I told my dad about it. Who my dad's like, staunch conservative New Jersey Republican dude, former police officer. This is not his shit at all, right? As soon as I told him that story, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen some weird shit too." I'm like, oh, see, you don't know until you talk to people about this stuff. I would think my dad
Yeah.
would be like, yeah, right, dude, you sound like an idiot, because that's like what would normally, he would react that way. But
Man,
he was like, that's weird.
that is, thank you for sharing. That is
Yeah.
super cool and weird at the same time. And I know a lot of people probably don't talk about the weird things that happen to them
Right.
for all the same
In
reasons.
fear of
being ridiculed
judged.
or being ostracized. Oh, you're one of those people. I mean, I feel that way around a lot of the current state of politics and what's going on. I'm like, if you really want to talk, like, let's talk. But like, otherwise, I feel like I'm just, gonna talk in circles, and you're gonna believe what you already believe, and I'm gonna already like doing my. Where I'm, I'm open. I still feel like kind of semi-set in where I'm at, So like what I think I know at times, and but I will retrace and say, man, I lied a bunch when I was a kid.
Dude, people who say that they never lied are full of shit.
I did a lot of the same shit. I wanted to fit in, man. I wanted to fit in, and if I could make a cool story out of something, I got caught a handful of times, and that after a while, it was like,
same.
Same. All right,
family, especially like my dad and my uncle and my grandmother, forget about it. You can't get anything past those people.
Yeah.
But your friends and stuff. I think it's something that we do when we don't have anything else interesting to kind of offer. People handle things differently. Some people they have a weird attitude towards people. That's their version of lying. Like some people are dishonest about the type of person they are when you meet them at first. And that's a form of lying if you think about it.
Yep.
And really just like making up a story and like exaggerating or like creating your own kind of story about something. It's like just your way of saying like, I don't really have anything else to contribute right now. But I mean, at this stage in my life, like I got plenty of shit to talk about. Why would I make up my shit now? If anything, it's like a risk. What I will say is if somebody doesn't want to communicate with me after hearing the story, thank you. I'm full up, dude. I don't need anybody reaching out anymore. I'm good. So fucking don't. I don't care. I'll keep that story to myself, dude. The fucking power could go out and I'm still going to tell that story to anybody who's curious to hear it, because it happened to Sydney and I, like it was it's that real to us, at least. I don't know what it was. It could have been a Frisbee the size of a fucking school. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? But like, but the mystery is interesting. And your experience is interesting, and the fact that it's imprinted on you is interesting. And
I'll never forget it. I wasn't scared at all. No
cool.
fear. It just was too fast to be explained, so not enough to think about.
Bro, we've been going at it for 3 hours.
Holy shit balls. Yeah, I missed another meeting, but I think they'll be forgiving. Yeah, my friend Michael, have you ever heard the band Zareth with an X?
No.
Xerath. They were a cool band on Candlelight Records. They were kind of like Devin Townsend meets like Dimmu Borgir, but like also like kind of like Steve Vai sometimes, like really funky shred guitar playing. My friend Michael was a drummer for that band. He's a composer at Riot Games. They do like League of Legends, and I was supposed to chat with him and Brucky, but we talk all the time, so I'm sure they'll be okay if I miss this one.
Sorry, dudes.
Yeah. Dude, you should check Zareth out, because I know you like Devin Townsend. Really cool shit, dude. I'll send you. I have a couple of pieces of music I got to send you that I know.
Yeah.
But dude, we could do this again too, man. I love doing this shit.
Yeah, same, dude. It's great chatting with you, and I love your perspective, and I like
likewise.
Just hearing what you're up to. Like, there's so many cool things going on, and we have a lot of parallels. So thankful for that.
We should do one, me, you, and Dan. That would be great.
Oh, brother, yes, absolutely.
I would love that shit.
Dan's the funnest. He's one of the guys I catch up with all the time, because like he just starts FaceTiming me. I'm like, yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Yes, let's talk.
He's great. He's fun.
Yeah. And I mean, he was one of the guys I actually meant to bring up earlier about like all the cool, the interesting videos. I mean, like, I'm not a fan of the content. I'm not a horror guy,
right?
But Ice Nine Kills and that band, like they're definitely
love those guys. I'm working on stuff with Ricky too.
Are you really? Oh
yeah.
I don't know Ricky, but I like his Instagram feed, and Dan speaks
Ricky,
highly of him.
One of the best people I know, man. He and I are becoming really good friends. But I've been working on his stuff for Hawk, and he's doing Lowest with Patrick is the drummer for Ice Nine. So he's got all these different like Ice Nine projects, And I've been working with Ricky back and forth. We have such a common music vocabulary that like it's just effortless. Like we just work on stuff all together. So
Cool.
yeah, I love him, dude. You should definitely chat with that dude at some point. Ricky is
I'd love to.
fucking fascinating. He's a super smart guy. Very, very good conversationalist. He would love to talk to you. So that would be a cool one.
Let's set that up in the near future
dude.
then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much.
Dude, awesome talking to you.
I got to do a couple more things in my crazy day.
Thank you for sending guitars for me, dude. Huge. They're game changing right now. So, and I can't wait to build some stuff too. We'll want to talk about that next.
Excited to welcome you to the Kiesel family, dude. That's super exciting.
So stoked.
And I'm excited that you're liking the Roswell microphones. That's super cool.
So good.
We'll do more stuff with that. And just chat with me anytime, man, as we do, I'll be around. So
sounds good, dude.
I'll talk to you
awesome, man.
soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson.
This episode of Players Pick Podcast is brought to you in part by our good friends at Jim Dunlop Guitar Products, Kiesel Custom Guitars, Roswell Pro Audio and Microphones, Happy Cable Company, Copper Sound Pedals, and our favorite coffee company, Road Roaster Coffee. Go to roadroastercoffee.com and use coupon code PLAYERSPICK to receive 15% off all orders, ongoing, forever. Well, isn't that nice?